All right, you're on. It's
All
all
right,
yours.
awesome. What's that?
It's all yours.
Okay. And I can share, Robert, my PowerPoint. Is that how everybody's been doing it?
It's your class. You
All
do that how you
right.
want to do it.
Let's do it. Hang on one sec. Let me get the cool. So let's stick this over here. Okay. Can everybody see that? Yep. Okay. Awesome. So let me figure out how to back up there. Oh, no, now I'm clicking through. Hold on one second, guys. Sorry, technical difficulties. It's been a little while since I've used PowerPoint. Okay, cool. Awesome. So welcome everybody. I think I said hi to everyone. I think we'll have a couple more joining. At least I know Deborah Brown said she's going to join as well. But yeah, just wanted to start off and kind of introduce myself and get to know you guys a little bit and hear some of your wins for the week. I think this is your first session this week. Is that correct? Awesome. Okay, cool. So my name is Emily Holmes, and I am a part of the ALC. And I have been with Metro. Metro was the first place that I landed back in October. Well, I technically came in and met Ashley and Evie and everybody in February 2017. And I went referral status while I was doing some traveling. And then I've been full-time active since October 2017. And just hit the ground running and never looked back. Loving being a part of this Metro fam. So would love to get to know you guys a little bit. Aida, do you want to start?
Okay. Okay. I was just double checking to make sure I wasn't on mute.
No.
I'm just joined Metro in September, I believe. I took my exam in August and just joined in September.
Awesome.
I just retired from being an educator for 26 plus years,
Wow.
but I still felt like I've always been the type I need to keep busy and need to keep challenging myself. And I really wanted to still keep serving the community. And as an educator, I felt I was always giving back. And I think real estate's another great avenue to give back to the community and do something good.
Awesome. Agreed. Very cool. Well, welcome. Bernardo, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I got my real estate license in early December. Did my coursework in June of last year after finishing teaching at a high school, actually.
Cool.
And I've been working in community development and disaster response for a few years. So I have a rich plate already. But the prompt for me getting trained was to help my parents in their transactions coming up as they retire.
Very cool. Okay. Awesome. Welcome. And Madison?
Good morning. My name is Madison. I got licensed in November and joined KW in November. I recently graduated from law school, and then instead of going down that path, I wanted to do something I was more passionate about. I always liked property and contracts, so that's why I chose real estate.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And then Aaron, I can see you there, and Deb, I see you as well. Aaron, do you want to give me a little bit about you?
Hey, I moved from Chicago 2 years ago now, in February 16th. Will be 2 years almost there. Been working in the marketing field, and then I've been flipping houses, buying and just flipping basically on the side. Just moved here, got my license September, and joined the KW.
Very cool. Awesome. All right. I'm loving these different backgrounds. And Deb, I know you've been joining these guys for a little bit, but do you want to give a little intro to yourself? I mean, I know all about you, but just in case. You're on mute, babe. There you go.
Hold on.
Better?
Yep.
Okay. Hi. Good morning. I'm with Metro 5.5 years now, and actually started with Metro and have only been here. New York, born and raised. had lots of careers. I'm old. And I just always gravitated towards real estate because I like looking at houses. Anyway,
Me too, babe.
and here, what'd you say?
Me too, babe. I
I know. So I still do. I can run my clients to the ground, which we're not supposed to do, show 12 houses in a day, but I can do that. Anyway, that's me. I love it here, and part of the ALC now, just like Emily. Yep. And like seeing all your faces.
Hey, welcome.
Thanks.
Melissa, do you want to go last? Thank you. The last one.
Sure. Sorry about being a little late. I actually hit my head earlier this morning, so it was a little longer. I'm fine. So if my head's a little red right here, just ignore it.
Okay.
Sorry about that. My name's Melissa, as you can tell. Been with Keller Williams since, I think I signed up at the beginning of December, and I'm with Coach Carl. And I've been licensed for about 3.5 years, but I haven't been active with it. I have had one transaction a while ago. I've been kind of busy running my other business, and that business is in the events industry and doesn't really exist right now. So I thought, I'm licensed, I might as well get back into real estate. And I actually got headhunted by someone that sent me to Steven. And of course, you know, the rest is history. How could you not fall in love with him and with everybody? And when I interviewed with Coach Carl, like fall in love with him too. I mean, it's an amazing, everything's been amazing. So I'm excited to be a part of Ignite.
Awesome. Well, welcome. Thank you guys for all joining today. I think that's everybody, right? Did I miss anybody? I think that's everybody. Yeah, so just stay engaged. I'm pretty relaxed, so whatever you guys, just yell out if you're if you have some question or you want to interject. We're easy. So and again, I do not do PowerPoint a lot, so hopefully if anybody can't see this as I click through, because I'm realizing I might have made the screen too big, let me know. I'm just sharing my screen and then I'll kind of click through. So today is session 9, and it's making and receiving offers. And I think the best way for you guys to learn is to kind of go through the motions filling out an offer, and also for me to give you some stories of successes that we've had in the past for my clients while writing an offer. And then also what I like on the listing end when I'm representing the seller, as well as what I've heard. I'm a little bit more buyer heavy right now. So what I've heard on the listing end lately, especially in this COVID market and this massive inventory crisis that we're in, what I've heard from other listing agents as I'm on the buyer side end, as to what they like and don't like, or appreciate and don't appreciate. So that's kind of the goal. So writing the high level details for here that Ignite has is writing and presenting successful offers, receiving offers that benefit your sellers. I'll give you a couple of loose scripts as far as when I'm going to write an offer. You know, I'll always talk to the listing agent first, or when I'm on the listing end, when a buyer's agent calls, what I might be saying on that end as well. And then setting the stage for positive negotiation is something they have in here, which you're going to do by the stuff that I show you as to how to communicate with the listing agents or buyer's agents, depending on which side you're on. You're just going to set that up for success, and just definitely be that agent that's setting it up for positive negotiation and a positive, you know, kind transaction, because it's just going to make your life a lot easier. So for now, I want to talk about your guys' daily 10-4s. Let me click through this a little bit just to make sure. Yep. So those are kind of the expectations. As far as your daily 10-4, can anybody share a win from this week with either adding contacts to your database, speaking with those people, writing your notes? I know it's a little bit trickier to preview 10 homes, but tell me what you guys are doing, and I'd love to hear more about it.
I'm actually not doing the 10-4 because I'm not in business, but I do have a friend whose parents are looking to buy an empty lot, and I may be making the transition into being active to run that transaction with them.
Awesome. Okay. So are you on referral status right now then, Bernardo?
Correct.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So it shouldn't take, but you do have your license in order to be on referral status. So it's just a matter of making that shift.
Correct.
Very cool. Okay. So anything that you've learned about vacant land since then?
Only that the loan qualifications might be a little bit more distinct. I don't know exactly what makes them different, but that's something that my coach notified me of prior.
Yeah.
And so it's been my first time like facilitating that communication between a loan officer and a principal and guiding them through that process.
That's awesome. And you will be light years ahead of some other agents who have never done a vacant land deal. So I've never done one myself, and it'll be a really good learning process for you. So that's great. That'll be a really good thing to have in your arsenal down the road.
It seems like at a distance, it seems like it's simpler, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I think once you like learn the nuances, I've gone through part of the process on a few of them, and have those in your back pocket, and you understand like what you can and can't do. I think it is somewhat simpler because you're not dealing with the actual, real property of a house.
Exactly.
And all the inspections and stuff that comes along with that. So yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. I'm excited for you to go active. Anybody else want to share a win from this week with the Daily 10-4?
I do.
Yeah.
I've never been a great consistent lead generator. But good at, I think, starting to get much more purposeful on that. And by the way, listen to that. That's 5 years in the making. You don't need to wait 5 years. So the reason why I bring this up is I know we're all new in our career here, but I'll just fashion it back afterwards. So I sold a property before the holiday, and I asked my title company to give me letters for the mile radius, and they did. And I just every day wrote 10, 15, 20 letters, got really fun, cool stamps from the post office, handwritten. And they just, in my mind, went into the abyss. And then I started again with the list, and got a call last week and got the listing on Saturday. And I went for my listing appointment on Saturday and got the listing agreement, and I'll get it signed today.
Yes.
So, the reason why I'm saying that is when you do your 10-4, it seems like it's arduous, and whether you have a deal or not, but looking at one of the things in the appointment, she said to me, I really love that you know what's going on in the market right now. Because I would tell her stories of a house that I knew down the street or something I'm looking at in Chula Vista. She understood that I really had my pulse on the market. And so viewing 10 properties, whether it just be going through the MLS or looking through people's, what people are the coming soons or anything, really look at them because there's a story to tell. They know that you get it. And even though you think those letters and cards are going out there into nowhere land, they pay off. So that's my win for the day.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Deb, because I've not done that before, and I have a client that actually kind of wants me to start doing that. A buyer that has a really specific, like downtown La Mesa. That's all she wants. And if she wants to get a fixer from an absentee owner, whatever the case may be, that's kind of the route that I'm going to go. I just talked to her about this last night, so I'm so stoked at that.
Yeah, really, because I think it just make it real simple, make it inviting, and handwrite it. Yep. And put a fun stamp on it. I think it's good. Also, Emily and I sold a property together, and we just walked that area and knocked on doors when you were able to no avail, but a lot of fun. But the end result is this couple that I just took the listing, they want to live out there in Spring Valley, or they want to live out there in Hamul. And now we know, and when that comes up, I know all about that pocket. I know all about that court. So all of a sudden, things become a conversation.
Yeah, and when it comes down to it, we did end up not through the door knocking through a different way, but we did sell that property off market for our clients for way more than they thought they were going to get on the market.
Right.
So it all, trust me, it all pays off. I know you can't knock on doors anymore, but honestly, I don't know. I mean, door knocking's fun, but as far as bang for your buck on time is concerned, picking up the phone and actually reaching out to your database is going to serve you even better when it comes to, you know, hours dialing. So anybody else, any other wins this week or today or 10-4?
I'll go.
Yeah, go for it. Mike.
Actually, I haven't been doing the 10-4, haven't been doing 10. I've been trying to just get a couple in a day, you know, there between Ignite and some other trainings. And also I do have to jump in daily and run my other business. Even though there's not much, still have stuff to do. And practicing scripts, sitting in on scripts 4 days a week. Like today with Stephen was really good. I did have a small aha with it, or a big one. Like towards the end, and a couple of you guys were on scripts today. For me, he, you know, was talking about shifting to what, like, instead of just, for me, what it went was shifting from trying to memorize all these scripts to the focus to what type of options are for the client when I'm, or potential client when I'm talking to a buyer or seller, and getting onto the mindset that what's the best and most flexible options for them, and finding out what those are. And then the big aha for me was, and he said it before, but today it's like struck me more, is when I asked the question, let the silence do the heavy lifting. Only because I know I tend to prattle and fill space, and then I forget what I was talking about before. So sitting on the scripting class is great because I'm sort of like absorbing being on there 4 days a week or 3 days a week. But that really hit me like, oh, I can just ask them a question and shut my mouth and wait for them to answer the question and see what they say. And they may fill in the blank and tell me a lot about what their mindset is. And then I'll be able to assist them with options.
100%. You are not the only one that wants to fill the awkward silence. And that's why that will work. It's extremely hard for me to do. I hear you saying that and I'm like, yep, me too. I'm a high D, high I. And so I just want to like love everybody and everything. And then I'm also way too detailed. So my background, just so you know, is finance. And so I'm Excel spreadsheets and into those types of details pre-real estate. So it's tough for me to do too. And it is the silence, and that's exactly perfect. And I'm glad you reminded me that Stephen uses that phrase, let the silence do the heavy lifting, because they will fill that awkward silence 95% of the time. And if they don't fill with what you want to hear, then you kind of know how future conversations are going to go, if they're going to keep things close to the chest still. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody have anything else about daily 10-4s they want to share?
I've been doing my day, my 10-4 on just social media, because I didn't get comfortable yet with the cold calling stuff as I did, a couple of times. But so I brought my newly Facebook, that's what I started after joining 3 months ago, joining the KW, to up to 3,000 people. So, and I'm sending them, almost not every day, I can say every 3-4 days, I send at least 5 to 10 people just text message, hey, how are you doing? If you need anything, if you guys are selling or anybody selling this, something like that, text message, very short, so they can read it and, maybe they respond. So I'm getting response.
Awesome. And some leads have come from that, or just at least engagement?
I'm trying to get engagement and leads from the social media mostly. That I'm trying to
Beautiful.
get.
That'll happen. And social media sometimes can be a long play too. So that's awesome. And that's something that we've gotten better at the posting on social media, but not quite going down the route that you're going on. And that's on our list to do. When I say our, I mean myself and my assistant.
I can say thanks to Salma that she sent me a couple of sample text messages, and basically I did modify those text messages, and I post them. So thanks to her, she's a great coach for that things.
She is a phenomenal resource. If you guys haven't gotten on her calendar, please do so. I'm glad that's where you got that, Erin. That's awesome.
Yes.
Anybody else want to share a win? Okay. Jump in if I'm missing you, but I just wanted to ask you guys, can you let me know, I know Aida, I got your chat, and so I will definitely go over, why can't I find the chat? Hang on a second. Go over the details about what to do when you're going up against buyers with no appraisal contingencies. And are you saying that's when your buyers are not comfortable removing the appraisal contingency, and so you're trying to kind of compete?
Yes, because they're concerned about overpaying for a place, which I can see that. But then we come up with a similar offer, but yet ours isn't selected because we didn't remove the appraisal contingency.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I know.
We'll talk about that for sure. I've got that written down. Is there anything else, while I've got you unmuted, is there anything else you want to talk about in this class? I want to make sure we hit all the points of what everybody needs to hear today, whatever's going on in your businesses.
I guess whatever anybody else or what you're noticing in the market, it being that it's competitive, when we submit our offer, it's like 20 other offers we're competing against. And, I reach out to the listing agent and try to elicit as much information from him as possible as to what the seller's looking for in a best offer. But many times, sometimes they're willing to share, and sometimes I'm just nagging till I force them to share. But whatever's working for others, that would be great.
For sure. We can all jump in and share, and I'll give you some tips and tricks too. We've gotten a little more creative over the years and had to get even more creative during this inventory crisis. So we'll definitely touch on that, on some creative ways to structure your offers.
Thank you.
So I'm going to write that down. What else do you guys want to hear? I'm sure there's a few other burning things that you're hoping I cover. Bernardo?
Yeah, I'm anticipating the offer process coming soon. For this transaction, I might be working. And I feel like it's distinct because this property, the potential buyers have had their eye on this property for a long time, for years. And the property has never been, it's been up, it's just never been sold, and they've never proceeded to make the transaction.
Okay.
So as it's been on the market for so long and recently went off the market, I think just because I'm going to find out, I think just because the owners gave up, I'm wondering how much leverage the buyers might have in negotiating a different price because of whatever reasons it might not have been sold for.
Right. For sure. So it's tough with vacant land. I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert, but I'm happy to speak to potentially getting something for a little bit lower. If it's been on the market for a very long time. So if it's vacant land, are there even, comps around there at all? Where is it located?
In Bonita.
Okay, you said that. Gotcha. Are there other lots that have sold that you can even pull pricing from in the last? I mean, normally I don't say go back a year, but for vacant land, sometimes you have to. Anything you've pulled in the last couple of years that you can see has sold around there?
Not quite, and that's not because there aren't any. I'm just not really sure how to yet. I just finally became familiar with Navigating Paragon yesterday.
Sure.
And so I know how to look up vacant lots that are available and then that are expired. I don't know yet how to determine which ones were like recently sold.
Okay, we
Uh,
can, we'll run through some, if you want to, we can run through like a quick rough and dirty. I think you guys did you take a CMA class yet, or that's coming up?
We did that session, yeah.
Okay, cool. So I will do just a quick and dirty, how to pull comps my way. I
Mhm.
won't do the whole like analysis, but I can show you how to quickly pull the sold comps from Paragon.
Okay.
We'll share screen and do that. What else do people want to hear today? All right, that's easy. If something comes up, let me know. You can think of anything, okay? All right, so have all the other Ignite instructors been making you make calls while on this class?
No.
Okay. Deb, are you gonna do this on Thursday?
What?
Are you gonna make them make calls online on Thursday? I know we used to do that when we were in the room, but I don't think we're doing that anymore, right?
Yeah, and I think when Robert gave us instruction, and if he's there, maybe he can chime in. I don't think that I don't think that was part of the gig.
Okay, cool. Yeah, he dropped off because he just wanted to make sure we were technically okay. But perfect. Yeah, I didn't have that in my plan, and I do have a lot to cover. So I know you guys are on that as best you can. It sounds like a lot of you have also some side hustles going on, or some, first full-time hustles going on. So I'm gonna let you, I know you know what 10-4 is. We're in session 9. So I'm gonna let you do that on your own, and we're gonna kind of get into some of these offers. So obviously the offer is the process of moving a buyer or seller agreement to a sales contract. This is kind of just in case anybody, I know Bernardo, you're getting close to doing this. So this is really important, this slide, just because you guys may understand this. Most first-time home buyers do not understand this part of the process. So what happens after your buyer makes an offer, and then we're going to talk about how to structure that and everything like that, but just an overview of what can happen, which is kind of good to learn about before we talk about how to structure it, because once you know what can happen afterwards, it'll help you structure the best offer to make sure you get in the, one of these 2 columns on the left, which is countering or acceptance. So when the buyer makes the offer, the seller is able to respond to the offer in one of 3 ways. And this is definitely something you're going to want to tell your buyers up front. As you're writing the offer, you don't necessarily have to go over this with them while you're seeing property. If it comes up, sure. But as you're writing the offer, you're going to say that the seller can either counter the offer, accept the offer outright, or reject the offer, right? So when they counter the offer, for anybody that doesn't know this quite yet, how many have written an offer already? Can you just raise your hands? Okay, so nobody yet besides Deb. Okay, awesome. So that's great. So, Aida, is that your thumbs up because you have?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Got it. So I've not hosted this whole multi-group before, so I'm still learning. So you may know, Aida, and the rest of you, just so you know, when you submit an offer, the seller, if they're going to counter, they can counter you back. If there's multiple offers, they can counter back on a seller multiple counter offer form, so an SMCO. And the way they do that is, as long as they're countering 2 or more offers, they're going to use that form. The counter offers, even if they're countering 2, 3, 8, 15 offers, they do not have to look the same. So that's important for your buyers to know, that the counters can look completely different for everybody. Usually they don't. A lot of times they're writing back and countering back and asking for your buyer's highest and best, and then they're cleaning up the terms to make the offers more apples to apples, as far as if someone went 10 days on their inspection contingency and someone went 12, they might bring that person who went 12 down to 10 and then counter them both on price for highest and best. So The other thing to know about that form, that seller multiple counter offer form, is if your buyers don't respond timely and the seller, for whatever reason, gravitates towards another buyer who did respond quickly, they can accept that other buyer's offer before you even counter back to them. So that's stuff that it's important to know, because it's from a timing standpoint, technically, if they don't put you on a time clock, that you have 3 days to respond, right? Unless they put an expiration date on there. And please stop me if I'm going too fast and we'll get a little more granular. But essentially it's the same as when you write an offer. You get 3 days till I think 5 p.m. the day after you send in the offer. It's the same on a counter offer that you would get back from a seller, or that you would send if you're representing a seller. Still 3 days, unless you put an expiration date. You could put an expiration date and time on the original offer, on a seller counter offer, on a buyer counter offer. You can shorten the time frame for whatever reason. In such a seller's market, I would not recommend putting an expiration date on an original offer. It's just going to set the tone a little funky from the get-go. So unless there's a real legitimate reason your buyers need to do that, I would not recommend doing that. On a seller counter offer, especially a multiple, you'll often, and especially in this market, you'll oftentimes see an expiration date. A lot of times they'll give you like overnight to decide, or 24 hours or something like that. That's very, very common. And just know that they may give you 24 hours, but if they're countering 5 offers and 4 of them respond within an hour or 2, and you take the full 24 hours, they're going to think that you're not as invested as those other 4 buyers. If you happen to beat everybody else out, great, you may still get the win and get the offer accepted. But the days of being able to like wait the full 24-hour time clock out are kind of over, at least temporarily. So that's just kind of a cautionary tale on waiting too long when you do receive a counter. I would jump on it within like a few hours to maybe overnight and in the morning the next day, depending on the time clock that they put you on, if they put you on one. Stop me again if there's any questions, just go ahead and chime in. And then the other way that they can counter is they may just counter you. I know it's crazy in this industry to think that that could even happen. It did happen to me in either November or just, we closed in December. I think it happened in late November. 8 offers, we weren't the highest, but based on what I'm going to teach you today and my rapport that I built with the listing agent, he straight up said, we're picking you because I want to work with you. And he just countered us on a few terms and accepted our offer after we countered back. We did not have to come up in price, even though we weren't the highest. And we just cleaned up a few terms on the counter. So they only countered us. So they did what's called a seller counter offer, or an SCO on that one. In that regard, nobody else has another chance, right? We have all the time in the world because they've only counted, not all the time in the world. We have all the time that's on that counter because they only countered us. So we just needed to make a decision if we were going to accept those like funky. There was like, they just said there was no washer dryer in the garage. It was super simple.
Can I ask a question?
So those are the 2 ways. Yeah, go ahead, Bernardo.
So you were chosen despite not making the highest or best offer, based on having the faith and rapport of the other agent?
Yes. So based on, I mean, there potentially could have been some other factors. Usually I'll say like sometimes they'll say it was because of the buyer's letter, but in this case, they were buying a flip. So the investor doesn't care. The investor usually doesn't care who wants to move in their home. Their thing is bottom line price, that's it. I connected quite a bit, and I like to develop as much rapport as possible with the listing agent before I send the offer, while I'm sending the offer, after I send the offer, so that they can understand what type of agent is going to be on the other end of the transaction. And I can't tell you, I think we've won out. I would say every 3rd offer, it's not the sole reason. For that one, it kind of was because we weren't the highest price and it was a flipper. But every 3rd offer, it gets mentioned that the listing agent thought that it was so important to have a good agent on the other side of the transaction that they helped guide their clients towards my buyer. Because there are just a lot of crappy agents out there and they don't want to deal with them. But what were you going to say? Sorry.
I think I might understand that it has to do not just with familiarity, but with a trust that it's going to be a complete and successful transaction.
Totally.
Although, how do you frame this then for the client who might effectively just be hearing, we're not accepting the highest offer here?
If I'm the listing agent or if I'm the buyer's agent representing that higher offer?
I just got confused.
So my buyer
listing
had an
agent.
offer that was not quite the highest price,
Yeah,
but we ended up getting selected with just a small counter, just to us with a few terms,
right.
solely based on my conversations and level of communication and the presentation of the offer and how clean it was to the listing agent. He
Emily,
had a lot of control over that client because it was a flipper that he worked with a lot.
Uh-huh.
So he guided his client towards us because he got a good feeling about what I was going to be like on the other end. I did not know him before submitting the offer.
and Bernardo,
Yeah.
I think in this specific case, Emily, I'm like all ears on this because I have 2 clients that I'm just losing out on every offer. So gosh, I'm hinging on every word that you're saying. But I think what Emily's saying here, because the client was a flip, it wasn't about my personal dollars. It wasn't about where I'm moving next. It wasn't about how much money I want to get out of my house because I redecorated my kitchen and I love it. It was really about a good, clean, solid offer from a business to a business.
And somebody that's gonna, close. And it might be worth to him the least amount of headache on the other end. It's kind of like that opportunity cost, right? We don't know how high the other offer was, Bernardo. It could have been $1,000 more. It could have been $5,000 more. I don't know. And frankly, he didn't say it was just one that was above us. It might have been 2. There were 8 total. That's all I know. And I know we weren't the highest. So Deb, thank you so much for interjecting because that's helping me kind of round this out. So I don't know. It could have been $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, whatever the opportunity cost that flipper and listing agent saw of having to potentially have worked with crappy agents in the past on certain flips. They gravitated towards us because they felt like it was going to be a done deal and a smooth transaction, and it was. So
I understand. There seems to be more security in accepting and having accepted your offer than one that was a little more.
Totally. And I'm giving that example right now, kind of just explain this slide. I'm not sugarcoating it and telling you guys that that's what's happening on the regular. I still have plenty of buyers right now where I'm going $50,000 over asking, removing appraisal contingencies, shortening inspection and loan contingencies. We're going to get to all this, and giving free rent backs and all that jazz, and still not getting accepted. Still not even getting countered sometimes. So I know what's going on out there. I'm not trying to say that like what happened in December is the norm. Even the market from December to January is very different. So we're going to get into all of that now. But I did just want to kind of explain this slide that it can happen. And that's why the relationship, it's all about relationships. The relationship that you can build with your client and the relationship that you can build with the listing agent from the get-go is going to be paramount. Now, if your client's coming in 20, 30, 10K under the next offer, is your relationship really going to, is you charming the pants off them really going to get them to move to your side? Probably not. But if it's within a few $1,000s, that opportunity cost might come into play.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So the form, it's SCO if you're only countering one buyer.
Correct.
What if you don't work a deal with that one buyer? Can you go to the other offers you had? Are you okay? So you can just.
Yeah, great question. So if let's say you use an SEO and for whatever reason it expires, like the buyer just drops off the face of the earth and doesn't respond, that's happened. Not as much in this market, but it's happened. Yep, you can move on as soon as it expires. Or if you're like going back and forth and you've put that buyer on a time clock, but they don't respond quick enough, or they respond quick enough, but you really can't come to an agreement, they counter back to you as the seller. Now the ball's back in your court. If you just decline that, they're what's called a BCO, buyer counter offer, then that's dead. And then you can go and move on to the next, either SCO, or if you had multiple and now you want to counter multiple, you can switch to an SMCO.
Okay, because I was just trying to understand why would you do an SCO rather than just countering multiple ones, just to like keep more, opportunity there for, and possibly to see what the best offer is, and just in a shorter time than just keep doing like single ones.
Totally. Yeah, you wouldn't really use, if you have multiple offers, if I'm on the seller's end, I likely wouldn't use the SCO unless I was really confident that I was going to be able to put the deal together with those people.
Okay, and what's the other form called? The multiple one?
It's SMCO, so seller multiple counteroffer.
Okay.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Great question, Madison. Okay. So obviously they can just accept your offer outright. I know this isn't happening a lot. This did happen on Sunday night though, not to my clients. We did not get it. We knew we wouldn't get it because my guys are investors and the numbers only work at a certain level. And we knew based on the comps, it was going to go higher. But randomly, funny story, we were in this house. It was in Imperial Beach, and my buyer, he's Navy. Again, investment property for them. They're this cute little couple that I helped buy their single family 2 years ago, and in Claremont. And he was like, "Oh, the seller must be a SEAL," because he saw a frogman poster in the little shed thing outside. And I was like, "Oh, well," he's like, "I wonder if I know him." And I was like, "Well, I'll look him up." And he's like, "You can do that?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's public record. You can look at any owner of any property, So I quick looked it up while we were there, and I'm like, "Oh, his name is blank." And he was like, "Oh my gosh." And he knew him. So we thought like, "Oh, this is a done deal," But then when they got home with their numbers and did their numbers, were looking a little higher than this other property they had thought to buy before. That didn't work out because the appraisal came in $60,000 under to that. So they're going up a little bit in price, but the bedrooms and bathrooms are still the same. So we got outbid, and they'll probably go for 20 grand over what worked for them as the numbers. But I tell you that story to let you know to like use everything to your advantage. And that listing agent specifically told me these sellers have been buyers in this agent or in this market. They know what everyone's going through right now. They don't want to put everyone through it, and they're just going to pick one offer and run with it. They are not countering. And so they ended up with 8 offers, and they just accepted one outright without even countering it. So it does happen. It's more rare because, like you said, Madison, usually they want to, if you're representing the seller, usually you want to pit buyers against each other, drive up the price more, bidding war, make them remove their appraisal contingency, which is kind of what Aida is talking about, which we'll talk about. But there are instances still, as of 2 days ago, where people are just accepting the offer outright. So that is still happening. And then rejecting the offer, of course, can happen so our offer on Sunday Sunday night, we submitted it Sunday night, and it got rejected Sunday night, kind of knowingly. She wanted to work. I'll show you this email that she wrote. This is a beautiful way. And 1 second. This is a really beautiful way as a listing agent. Can you guys see? Hold on 1 second. Okay, can you guys see my screen sharing? No?
All I see is the offer process slide.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. How do I get this? I know I'm like live on YouTube and I want to be able to show you new share. Let's see. Okay. Can you see it now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So this hardly ever happens as the listing agent after you receive 8 offers. Be this listing agent. This is the listing agent that I want to get into contract with. She and I were vibing really hard. If we had been competitive with price, we would have 100% gotten this house. And I don't ever say that, by the way, in this market. But this was like a super nice way. If you can see the whole thing, can you see the whole thing? Super nice way for somebody. She didn't pick up the phone because it's 11:32 p.m. because she's apparently working too hard, like all of us. And she's saying, I fully understand how challenging this market is for your buyers, as I'm in the same boat as well. A lot of times they'll just be listing agents. They rarely represent buyers, and they just don't have a lot of empathy. for what buyers are going through. Sometimes you don't even get, sometimes I've had a listing agent, they just mark the listing pending. They don't even tell you that you didn't get it. They just mark it pending in the MLS and they move on. So this is a really good way, taking it from the seller perspective, of just kind of explaining. I know she doesn't say at what price they ultimately got, but I also probably wouldn't do that either, because it could still fall out at this point and she might not want to show all her cards. But this is the agent that chose the one offer and just ran with it, which she told us the sellers were going to do beforehand, because I checked in with her, because I always do, which we'll get to. So this was a really awesome way for her to respond. And I ended up forwarding this to my buyers, removing all her info, but they can find out who it is anyway. And that way it like softened the blow a little bit when I called them to give them the bad news. And this is the one where the buyer happened to know the seller.
Yeah, Emily,
Yeah.
I love that forwarding it to your buyer, because they also know the continued hard work you're doing, especially if, you know, you haven't got an offer or two accepted. They get
Yep.
a little frustrated. I know you knew these buyers, but oftentimes if it's the first time that you're working with them, so forwarding this over just adds that level of confidence in you, I think.
Yep, 100%. Thank you for pointing that out. And just so you guys know, we're going to go over it in a second. I'm going to show you, you're going to freak out when I show you this right now. I'm going to show you how I send an offer over. The funny thing is, and I don't know if we're live on YouTube, if like he's watching or anything, the only realtor that was like, whoa, was Vinny from our office when he and I put a deal together. This is how long and Deb, you're going to probably laugh, but you're not going to be surprised, Deb, because you know me. This is how long my offer emails are. And I would say every third offer, I get massive compliments on, at a minimum, massive compliments on the way I present my offers, how clean they are, and how they loved my level of detail. This was actually specifically, I copy paste, every client looks like this. This has a little more fluff in the beginning up here, because I've vibed harder with this agent than I probably had vibed with any agent in months. So any outside agent, obviously. Metro's the best. But this is a little fluff up top, but this is always going in every single offer email that I'm sending out. I'll send this to you, no worries. This is also a little more fluff because these guys are just phenomenal. She owns a center for autistic children, or they specialize in autism in children. So a center for special needs down in Chula Vista. And because the buyer knew the seller, I needed to kind of disclose that. She and I had already talked about that. So this has a little more content than it normally would, and this is longer than it would. But this blip about the lender is always here, whether I knew them or not. And this bullet point list is always here, whether I knew them or not. As is me originally, the first thing out of my mouth is thanking them for their time.
Hey, Em.
So, yeah.
So you've put in your clients and what you like about them and how cool they are. Do you
Yep.
also have them write their letter?
I normally do.
Yeah.
These guys didn't, because they knew the seller. It would just be like kind of awkward to like reintroduce themselves. And they had already been texting with the seller. So like he straight up went and got the seller's phone number, because they're both in like the same area of the Navy. The one guy was a SEAL, but my guy's like an operations officer. And so it was just going to be like a weird to write a letter in this regard.
Got it.
But
would
yes,
you?
I
So was
always
it-
have my buyers write a letter.
Yeah, I do all the time also.
Yeah. And I'm going to give you guys all this content. I'm going to send you all the emails that I send to my buyers up front. I send them, like this morning, I sent my buyer who we're going to write an offer today or tomorrow on a downtown condo. And it's a regular seller. It's not a flipper. And neither was this one. This wasn't a flipper. Obviously he knew the sellers. It was a family. But I always send them examples of letters to the seller. I switch out the names, switch out the pictures, because some of the buyers were like, I don't know what to write about myself. And so it's just a quick little, hey, this is to get the juices flowing. Boom. And you send it off to your buyers. So they can be prepping that while you're prepping the offer. Or a lot of my buyers are like, what do I got to do to make sure we're like ready to rock? Well, they can start doing that prior to you even showing them property. Yes, so I will send this to all of you. Yeah, do you guys, oh, actually, you know what, Aida, Deb, and this is what I actually wanted to ask Broker Bob, but we got started too quickly. Did they officially say that letters to the sellers are not allowed anymore? Or are they still working on that
I
regularly?
was in a training, I believe last month where I think it was Broker Bob who said we are not accepting, or we're not to submit letters due to the, discrimination laws.
Right. So I have mixed emotions on that, but yes, I ask the listing agent if they want them now. So I do ask first. And you know what? Before I tell you guys writing a letter is a good idea, let me check on that with Broker Bob, and I will circle back, because I know that was in the works, and I went away for a month, to be honest. And so I'm going to find out. So this one did not have a letter with it, but I do my little blip at the bottom about who they are, just to me, not who they would be to the seller, but who I want to describe my clients always, because it's super weird, but a lot of listing agents will be like, tell me a little bit about your buyer. And I'll now do that. I say it's super weird in the beginning. That's what was happening. And I was like, oh, they really want to know. So now I start putting it in this email. And again, this is probably the longest one I've written it like ever, maybe. So this might not have been the greatest example to pull up, but I will send you this anyway. And I'll send you maybe a couple. So I'm going to ask Broker Bob about the letter to sellers, but either way,
send a sample like this.
Sorry, Aaron.
You're going to send the sample to us.
Yep. I'm going to email.
I put my email because it's good, because I'm buying property actually for myself. I want to just put the offer is going to help me how to write it down.
Yep, definitely. And this is just the reason that this is, if everybody can just put their emails in the chat box, guys, and I'll send you all this content. So I'm going to write a list of stuff to send you. The offer emails. I'm going to just send you my letter to the sellers, if Broker Bob says it's okay. And then I have another document that I'll get to that I'm going to send you, that I'm writing down to myself.
Can I check for understanding?
What's that?
So you're saying that a law is either in creation or has already been enacted or maybe enacted regarding writing a letter to the seller about the buyer's profile and their interests because they might discriminate who to sell to based on perhaps a number of things.
Correct. And the regulation that is either in place or about to be is the buyer writing a letter directly to the seller. We call it like a love letter to the seller. So they would normally just write a letter to introduce themselves, who they are, what their story is, if they moved here from the East Coast, where they went to college, anything they can connect with the seller on potentially, as well as what they liked about the home. So just trying to literally just pull on the heartstrings of the seller to get them to sell to them. And we've been doing it forever, and it works really well. A lot of times the listing agents will say, oh, my sellers are going with you because of the letter, but it might be getting taken away, or it might have already gotten taken away. So I'm sorry, I don't know that yet, but I will find out for you guys. And the reason is, like you said, Bernardo, I guess the story is, Deb, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was somebody that wrote in and they were a military family or military couple, and the sellers didn't like military because they're bonkers. And they decided to not choose them because they were military. They went with a different offer. And I think those people either sued, or somehow that buyer's agent or those military buyers found out that was why they didn't get chosen. And so it's become, that's one thing that has made this become an issue.
Yeah, I could see the legal ramifications of that. So what will it be unlawful altogether for a potential buyer to write a seller, even say with the delivery happening through the agents?
The delivery does happen through the agents always.
Okay.
So, do you mean if it doesn't happen through the agents?
So it sounds like, yeah, if it doesn't happen through the agents, like if the agents do not participate in that communication, how would we?
How would I know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they'd have to go drop it off, but how would I know?
Okay.
yeah. The tough part about, I have mixed emotions about this whole letter to the seller thing, being, you know, taken away as a tool in the arsenal, because the military buyers, they would have had realistically would have had a VA loan 80% of the time, unless it was an investment property. And so they would have known they were military, whether they wrote a letter to the seller or not, you know? So it's tough though. I understand with like race and religion and things like that, and people don't want to get into that whole side of discrimination either. So there are two sides to, you know, every coin. But anyway, so that's where we're going. I will circle back on that, and I will send you guys all of this. We're gonna get into this, but just as a little like high level, I got all your email addresses, I think.
I have a question,
So
Emily, for you.
Go ahead.
Well, it's a shame that what they did with that military guy. But anyway, if when you have experience definitely more than me on this offering stuff, let's say the property has been on the market for almost 6 months, and is like $710,000, and the buyer putting the offer. I mean, what is the reasonable offer for, you know, and if you see or anybody can help out, what's the reasonable offer to put for the property that is 710 and been sitting in the market for 6 months?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's definitely property by property. It's neighborhood and quality. I would have to see both of those, or at least the photos in the neighborhood. So I need the address. But if it's been sitting on the market at 710, it's never gone into escrow and fallen out, never been pulled off, put back on, and it's been sitting there consistently. Whether they've dropped, if they haven't dropped the price recently or significantly, like enough to move the needle, it's definitely overpriced if it's a quality home inside. Because
Yeah,
right
they don't
now,
really want to sell it,
what's that, Deb?
and they don't really want to sell it.
Right. So that, yeah.
Well,
That's
the things is like the property that I'm looking is not here, somewhere else, but lady, she's 75, 76 years old, and you know, it's just, you know, it's taking her time, and offer comes and goes, and been sitting there for 6-7 months. So I said example like 700 she wants, but that what is the best offer to put for her that finally, you know, she accepted, you know?
Now, are you
that-
representing this? You're representing the seller?
No,
or
for
you-
myself, yeah.
Okay.
I
So
am
you
the
want to
buyer.
buy for you to buy
Yes,
it. Okay.
Yes.
So I think it really depends on the comps. What does the neighborhood say that it's worth? Actually, because it's not worth 710. I'll tell you that.
Right.
Unless
Yeah,
it's
it
a total,
says-
unless it's a total fixer.
Is almost like 10, 15 years old. It's around neighborhood, let's say, is around like 600, 620. That what goes,
Okay.
but she wants
So-
750, so been sitting for 6 months.
Yeah. So to Deb's point, unfortunately, she just doesn't sound super motivated. So you can totally throw 620, 630 at her. But the bottom line is if you're not paying cash, you need it to appraise, or you need to be ready to come to the table with extra cash to make up that shortage if you're getting a
Okay.
loan.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't like blow the doors off it and give her 650, 675, 700. But if her magic number is 700 and it's worth 620, she's never going to sell it. Not yet. You know, so it's going to sit there. So you're going to have time on this one. And what, like Deb said, she just might not be motivated. There are still sellers. I'm still running comps out there and being like, why is this sitting for 99 days? And I'm like, oh, because they're not motivated, and they're throwing it up and saying, well, if someone gives me 710, I'll sell, you know, because they have whatever reason. Go ahead, Deb.
You know, it's like some of those old houses in Coronado. I think I moved out there. I lived out there for about a year and a half, and the same houses were sitting on the market for the whole year and a half. Now, granted, you know, $10 million homes don't go every day, but I really, my theory at the end of the day was they put a price tag on it for some ridiculous $20 million. And if somebody wants to buy it, good. If they don't want to buy it, let it sit there. And
It's
I think
11 o'clock.
I think that seems to be happening with your old gal. She just, you know what, if somebody bites, great. If not, I'm staying here.
Right. Is that the vibe that you're getting from her, Aaron?
I'm getting from the agent, yeah. Not directly, but from the agent, yes.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. And feel free to send the property over if you want us to take a look at it. But you sound like you have a pretty good handle based on your background on the comps. So if it's worth 610, 620 is what I'm hearing, I wouldn't be offering too much more than that, but I also wouldn't be expecting her to accept it. Because if she really wanted to sell, she would have dropped it to 650 or something by now, you know?
Well,
Has she dropped it at all? The
No,
price?
not in last 6 months, yes.
Yikes.
I
Yeah.
have a question.
Yeah.
Aaron, what's your motivation for wanting to buy the property? Do you want to resell it? Do you want to
To
live
sell
there?
it is an investment, just or rent it out. Yeah,
Yeah, I'd move on that one, I think.
got it.
Aaron, where do your numbers work? Great question, Deb.
What do you mean?
What sales price do your projected rental incomes, what are you holding on to it for appreciation, or do you want a cash flow?
Appreciation, and also, while is appreciating, is rented out, make money to pay them,
Yeah,
the
to
loan
cover
I'm
the
getting,
mortgage, but
yes.
you don't necessarily need to like cash flow on top of the mortgage and everything. You just
It's not a mortgage because it's my brother's, putting money, so it's gonna be not mortgage, the money is
good,
there,
okay.
so yeah.
So then your
But
numbers kind of
Have to
might
be,
work to
yeah, I have
pay
to
a
make
little
money,
bit
yeah,
for-
you have to make money of the investment, so.
Right. So I mean, if you're not, so is your brother, or would your brother and you pay cash then?
Yes,
So then if you're not going to have a mortgage, I mean, what I might do is figure out what makes sense. Like maybe at that point, then you can afford to pay 650 for it, even if it's worth 620, 610, depending on what you can get as a rental monthly.
you were thinking like maybe 2,500.
Okay. So yeah, you just have to decide how much you want to cash flow since you're not going to have a mortgage on it and what works for you. Because if you're paying cash, you might be able to pay a little bit more and rent it out. But I mean, as an investment, it's strictly a numbers game. And I can tell you're not emotional about it, which is great.
Right,
But yeah, we can chat more about that too.
thank you.
Sure. Okay, so any questions on this email? I am going to send it out after the end of class. And we are going to we'll either go over this offer or another one I wrote recently. Actually, let's go over this one. I'm just going
Will
to
we
show
take
you.
a break soon?
What's that?
Will we take a break soon?
Yeah, let's take a break. Oh yeah, it's 11:02. Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break right now, guys. And then we're going to get into the PowerPoint and then go not as much off script. All right, I'll see you I'll see you at 11:06.
Buyers.
What's that?
Do you CC your buyers on the email?
No, never. On the offer? No.
Mhm. Okay.
Sometimes I'll send them it after just because of that really nice comment from the listing agent that I just showed you on that one. Sometimes I'll forward the email. It's rare. Most of the emails don't look like that. Most of them are phone calls. You didn't get it, whatever. But no, I do not CC my buyers on any of the offer emails ever.
Okay.
All right, let's come back at 11:08, guys. See you soon.
Thank you, 1108.
Yep. Okay, guys, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me? Everybody good? Okay, so that was perfect for this class because I just pulled up this. Can everybody see my screen?
Still looking at your email.
Yes. Okay. That is what I want you to see. So this agent just happened to call me as I pulled this up. So this is just one more. We're going to get this house, by the way. This is just one more. There's like, I think there were 8 offers. There's 4 that are 20,000 over asking or more, which asking was 779. And so he was just calling about this. And these are also like really great examples and really great levers to pull. So this is what my normal length looks like. Again, a little bit longer, a little bit lengthy. I love these humans. They're just good peeps. So it's a little bit getting into them a little bit more. And then I had built some rapport with this guy over the last month because the home was in coming soon status. So I will send both of these examples from Hudson and Iris Avenue. And I really hope no one has an offer out on Hudson because that would make me feel bad. But anyway, so let me know, does anybody have any question on the structure of this and like why I'm putting all of this in here with the bullet point list, which is basically the meat and potatoes and what they actually care about? Anybody have questions?
I guess that right now, since I'm going through that process of helping this buyer get pre-qualified for their loan, I'm seeing that it looks like a lot of those same documents that they're using for the qualification would also be shown to the seller. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, so let's open up this attachment. Let me know if you can still see this. That's the letter to the sellers on top. Okay,
Yeah.
with a little picture of my buyers. So this is their pre-approval letter. Okay, so you can see that, Bernardo? Yep, so this is their pre-approval letter. They've been all the way through everything. Income and assets reviewed, credit and debt, hard credit pull. They've looked up DTI. They've done desktop underwriting approval at a minimum. Sometimes they've gone all the way through underwriting. These people have not, but that's okay. That's more rare. And then I've removed all of their account numbers from here, so I'm okay to flash this to you. But yep, the next thing would be their proof of funds. The PDF statements of showing how much money that they have on hand for the down payment and the closing costs. You definitely want to put something in there that shows the down payment and an account or accounts. You can saw that was 3 accounts that shows enough money that they have cash on hand for the down payment, the closing costs, and maybe a little buffer, because the sellers don't want to think that your buyers are using every last dime they have on the down payment and the closing costs, because that means when they get into the inspections and rubber meets the road, that means the buyers physically can't pay for any of those repairs. So they're going to be asking for that stuff from the seller. Now, by the same token, you're going to tell your buyers, I don't intend to have to pay for these repairs. I'm still going to ask for repairs if something is warranted. But as a psychological thing for the seller, they want to see that your buyer's not using every last dime on the down payment and closing costs. Or if it's a VA buyer, on just the closing costs. Got it? Since there's no down payment, if it's under the loan limit. So there's a lot to cover. And I know this session is condensed into 2 hours. So I'm going to flip back to the PowerPoint, and then we're going to get into some tips and tricks, stories on the offer writing side. We'll run through an offer also. We'll run through this offer, and then we'll take it also from the listing side in the last portion of the class. Okay. And let me know if you have any questions. Did that answer your question, Bernardo, on that one?
Essentially, I know that I'm.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Bernardo.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you're going to send over proof of funds. You're going to send over pre-approval letter. Now for yours, because are your people buying the lot cash?
You mean paying for all of it up front?
Yeah, or are they doing a hard money loan or private money loan?
So I don't know the difference between those two. I know that that the loan would be with US Bank right now. I think they're the only bank out there doing
lot grants. Perfect. So yeah, so you would have a pre-approval letter then, and then you would show the ability for the proof of funds as well. And proof of funds is just any bank account or multiple bank accounts, 401k accounts, checking, savings, stocks, whatever can be liquid, 403b, that shows that your clients have in hand already the amount for the closing costs and the amount for the down payment. Okay. And the initial deposit is part of the down payment, not over and above. So you don't need that also. That's part of it. Deb, what were you chiming in with?
I got a text back from Robert on the letter. You can write a letter,
Beautiful.
but your buyers have to talk about the home and why they like the home. Not that they are a nice white family that likes the neighborhood and wants to live close to the synagogue or local gay bar. Only the qualities of the home. It has charm, it has style, it has a big backyard. Stay away from describing anything about them, or they have 2 kids, or they're gay couple, anything like that. And definitely no photos. Think of the 22 protected classes in California for fair housing. Okay, so in that fair housing disclosure?
Yep.
So all of that's got to stay out of the letter. Just, I walked in, I could see my family in the home, or wow, love the living room, kitchen, all that jazz.
Perfect. Thank you, Deb, for
Welcome.
handling that on the side. I appreciate that.
Uh-huh.
Is it fair to assume then that the bottom line is avoid any kind of self-identification or description of the buyer's profile?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have your name on there, but maybe you leave off the last name, but they're going to know the last name from the offer anyway. It's all just a little convoluted, to be honest, but we'll follow the rules for sure. I'm a rule follower for sure, guys. Well, except for the fact that I sent a picture the other day, apparently, and I wasn't allowed to. So other than that, when I didn't realize that was the rule already, but that's super helpful. Yeah, try to leave off any, self-identifying information on there, which is great. So I'll modify my examples of letters to the sellers before I send them to you, and I'll get those over to you guys no later than tomorrow. Okay, so any other questions here? I think I'm going to try to kind of flip through these slides because there's not a ton of them. And then I'm going to get to like real life. Let's kind of go through an offer together, and then I'll take it from both perspectives. If I run out of time, Bernardo, to do the comps, I will offline with you how to do the comps on sold stuff for your vacant land tomorrow or whenever you have a chance.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So, okay, why isn't this going? Okay. So prepare to write the offer, checklist for preparing to write an offer. Okay, so my checklist, and we'll kind of get into some of this now. My checklist for preparing to write an offer, I'll probably put this in a little email to you guys as well if it's helpful. I want to kind of take this one step back. So the first thing you're going to want to do is obviously manage your buyer's expectations from the start, right? So before you go out and show homes, and I know that some of the other Ignite instructors might have covered this, but you want to manage your expectations on a few things. Number one would be the timing of the market. So the days of my buyers a year and a half ago being like, I want to be in a house in 30 to 45 days. I'd be like, oh yeah, no problem. We'll definitely have that done. I do not make those statements anymore. Because it depends on how picky they are. Like even the pickiest person, I could have probably gotten them under contract and closed in 45 days from the day we started looking at property a year and a half ago. Those days are temporarily, hopefully, over. So you just need to manage their expectations on timing. Could it happen? Sure. Yeah. If you've got a dynamite lender that can close in 21 days and you've got a not picky buyer that knows what they want, absolutely. But let that be a happy accident. Don't act like that's going to be the norm. Okay, so manage the expectations on timing as far as how long it might take to get an offer accepted. You guys can be the best agents in the world, but if they're not writing strong enough offers from a price point wise, or they're not willing to go out of their comfort zone and take a few risks terms wise, which is okay, they don't have to be, but it doesn't matter how much rapport you develop if they're not writing solid offers. Okay, so that's one thing. Yes, and I totally do have that, Aida. Aida was asking if, Aida, am I saying that right? Aida? Okay, so do I have a lender that I recommend we use that will qualify your buyers to the pre-underwritten point? Yes. So Amanda Silber will do that depending on the client. So just ask her. That's Movement Mortgage. I'm sure any of the Movement Mortgage, Wes Shaw, Ed Belinkie, I'm sure any of them will do that for us in-house if they're able. They used to do it on every client a lot of times, and it takes them the shortest amount of time of any lender, I would say, to do it. I think it's like 6 hours was their thing before. The problem right now is because interest rates are so low and their refinances are so high, they're still prioritizing buyers who are purchasing over refinances, but they just don't have the bandwidth to take everybody start to finish through underwriting before you get into escrow. So it would kind of be more of a special ask. So I've got a couple more, Aida, and I'll ask them if they're still doing that right now. There's one other one that I have, so I can send that to you guys separately as well. Let me put that on my list of stuff to send to you guys.
Thank you.
Okay. So, okay. So here's I want to take it one step back from this slide. You're managing your buyer's expectations about timing. No matter how good you are, you might have to write more than one offer to get your offer accepted. I know I'm telling you some of these good stories. I've also, with these same buyers that are hopefully going to get their counter accepted tonight or tomorrow, they've written 2 offers, guys. $40,000, $50,000 over asking, removing their appraisal contingency. And the last 2 times, I guess we were countered on both of them and we just didn't come up high enough. And I had developed really good rapport with one of the agents. The other was kind of a dud, so I didn't really like connect with her. It was impossible. I did my whole thing like I normally do, and it just didn't happen. She was on her high horse, thought that, you know, her S didn't stink, and we just couldn't like get there. And that's going to happen too. Like, you're not going to be able to win them all over because they're not going to all be like you guys. Be prepared for that. So Debbie and I can speak to that on the listing that we shared together. But on that point, definitely be professional and stay professional, because Deb and I had the worst buyer's agent on the other end of our deal that we closed together from the off-market deal. And then 2 years later, I had to get into contract with her again, and I was on the buyer side. So, and she was, by the way, a different person, like totally much better to work with. I won't say totally awesome because that was not it, but much better. So you never know what's going on in someone's life. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Try not to judge. You carry the team and bring the transaction to the finish line, no matter which side you're on. If you're on the other side of a dud, as I'll call them, and just do not burn that bridge, because you will absolutely meet them again at some point in your career, without a doubt. Whether it's just a showing, request, offers, you might be on the other side. Like I said, we were representing the sellers before in a seller's market, and then I had to be the buyer's agent. So it just don't do it. Don't burn a bridge. So you're managing your buyer's expectations on timing. The stuff that you want to get before you even start to show property, pre-approval letter, and I would even get a proof of funds. There are a lot of agents out there right now that are requiring both of those things in addition to the PED form in order to get a showing, which is totally fine. I don't really have a problem with that. I've done it before on the listing side. I know there's a lot of agents that are up in arms about that, but it doesn't really bother me, because you should have your shit in line before you're showing anyone a property anyway. That's kind of like my take, because otherwise you're wasting your time. If they don't know what they can buy, you shouldn't be taking them to a property, because then you're either going to get their hopes up and they're going to be comparing everything to that property down the line that they couldn't afford anyway. It was all a mirage. Or, you know, you're just not going to be ready, and you might miss the boat if people are writing offers, or when you go, there's already offers in. The other thing, like I said, since we thank you, Deb, we've learned we can do letters to the sellers. You guys can get them to start doing that up front, like prep it. And then the only thing they have to fill in when they find the property that they like is what they liked about the property. So they can get like a template basically ready. That's what these buyers for the one I was just talking about have done. So they have that ready to go. They had that ready before they moved and relocated from Chicago, because they wanted to be ready to go. And those are the types of buyers that you really want to spend the most time with, because they're not wasting your time. So you want to talk about competition. You want to talk about the fact that, like, the days of you going in and being the only offer in on a property. I mean, I don't know, Deb, have you been the only offer in a long time?
I absolutely not.
Yeah, I don't remember the last time I was the only one in.
No, absolutely not. it's absolutely not. Let's put
Yeah.
it that way.
So just the whole, like, I want to get a good deal. Don't tell them they're going to get a good deal. That's not they're not getting anything under asking right now, unless it's overpriced. And then that's not really getting a good deal. They're just getting it at market value, which happens to be under asking. So just those days for now, not saying that this won't change, but the whole days of like, it's always funny to me when first time home buyers are like, I just want to make sure it's a good deal. Well, I can make sure it's like, we can try to make sure together that you're not going to overpay for it, meaning like overpay over the appraisal. But again, a lot of times right now, people are removing their appraisal contingencies like you've seen, Aida. So we'll talk about some of the levers to pull on that. Manage their expectations about a lot of these properties going over asking. And what that means is you need to get really good at running your comps so that you can kind of figure out where that offer is going to end up, where that home is going to end up from an appraisal standpoint, so that you can kind of gauge for them if your buyers are going to have to come out of pocket with anything to cover the difference, the shortage from the accepted offer value to the appraised value. So I don't want like eyes to glaze over when I say that. So let's get into that a little bit deeper. And this is kind of with Aida's questions. So people are writing over asking because the market is so competitive right now. We're at historically low inventory value or inventory, and we are at historically high buyer demand, right? So you're getting multiple offers, which is automatically causing a bidding war, pushing those prices up. And buyers out there that have enough cash on hand are removing their appraisal contingencies up front and are ready to come to play and basically put their money where their mouth is if an appraisal comes in short. It's really tough to compete with that when your buyers aren't willing to do it, Aida. Yeah. There's a few things I want to say that I don't know if I should say, Deb, and I want you to tell me if I should say them.
So essentially with that, the buyer then, so I'll use my example. So the buyer went in with an offer of 380, which was a really good offer. I think this place was worth it. Okay. And we lost to a buyer who offered 380 and removed the appraisal contingency because there were no recent solds, only pendings in, more than 6 months. Another unit we looked at in a different complex went for, asking was 369, same as this one, okay. Sold for 410, or just accepted an offer is impending. And I spoke to that listing agent for 410 since I was having a hard time appraising this particular property.
Right.
So they went with this offer that, waived the appraisal and said they would put $10,000 in earnest money. So if the appraisal comes in, let's say at 370, that buyer has to add $10,000 out of their pocket towards financing. Is that it?
Correct. Great example. So it's not quite exactly 10,000 because let's think about it. Let me use your example. Let's say your buyers were the ones that removed their appraisal contingency. What were they putting down? How much percentage?
They were putting 5% down.
Okay. So they're putting 5% down. Originally, if they go in at 380, putting 5% down, their loan,
I think it was like 360 somewhere.
Yeah, and I just can't do it in my head. Their loan at 380 with 5% down is their down payment is $19,000. And their loan, I don't know if you guys can see this because I think I'm just doing my calculator on the side, 361.
Yeah.
So their loan's 361. The way that the loan works when you have any loan on a property, the lender can only lend your buyer, whatever the percentage is, 80%, 75%, 95%, whatever the loan to value is supposed to be. They can only lend, so in your case, 95% of the accepted offer price or the appraised value, whichever is lower.
Oh, okay.
So if the appraised value comes in at 370, now your loan can only be $351,500. But so now we're talking about bringing more cash to the table to make sure that the seller still gets their price, right? They still want that
Right.
380, well, in this market, and that your buyer still has to come up with a difference. So it's not quite a direct calculation because it's like a percentage, but
that
yeah,
would be
for
20.
all intents and purposes, an easy way to think of it for your buyer is they're going to have to come up with $10,000 because it's just a little bit less than that.
Yeah.
And the other option is when we're not in this crazy of a market, or if you get a super nice seller, there are actually 4 things that can happen if an appraisal comes in low like that. The first option, not in this market, but it could happen if you get a really, really, really nice seller, is the seller just drops the price. You know, you went in at 380, it appraised for 370, which means it's worth 370, even though an appraisal is someone's opinion. It's worth 370. That's what the lender now thinks. It's a bank thinks. So the seller could just drop the price to 370, change the price, the sales price, and we move through it. We move on. The other option is the buyer covers that entire difference in cash because their loan is now only based on 370, 95% of 370 instead of 95% of 380. So the other thing that you can do instead is meet in the middle. That's option C. Let's say the seller is super reasonable and they're like, you know what? I'll come down to 375 and then you need to cough up $5,000, Mr. Buyer, Mr. Mrs. Buyer. Okay. So you can meet in the middle. If you can't agree to option A, B, or C, 1, 2, or 3, whatever I called them, then the fourth option is the buyers cancel the contract. Now, in your case, Aida, those buyers, because we're pretending it was yours, didn't have an appraisal contingency. So without an appraisal contingency, the only option of those that you're supposed to be able to use is option 3, where the option 2, where the buyer covers the full amount.
Yeah.
Now, here's what I was going to say, Deb, that I know we're recording live and whatever, I'm going to say it anyway. There are plenty of buyers out there that fully do not intend to cover any appraisal shortage, but they will pretend they will up front, and they will remove their appraisal contingency up front to make their offer stronger and to be the one that gets picked.
Yeah.
Is it right? No, probably not. Are they doing it? Definitely. More of them than you think they are? More buyers than you think are doing it? Definitely. And are you going to lose out if you're not doing it? Maybe. So that's kind of as detailed as I'm going to go into that. The only way, and this, I'm not telling you to skirt the system, but I'm telling you what other buyers out there are potentially doing, is if it's a huge gap, like $10,000 at that price point for that for that income bracket, that might be that could be very impactful for them. 10,000. Sometimes we're talking about like a $50,000 shortage, right? In the 800, 900 bracket, million bracket. So if they don't want to actually cough up the difference, people are still removing their appraisal contingencies up front, and they're trying to use the other contingencies to get out of the contract later if for some reason that appraisal gap is more than they intended to cover.
Okay.
Again, is it right? Is it ethical? Not really. Are a lot of people doing it? Absolutely. So I don't know, Deb, if you want to comment on that, but I'm sure you've seen that.
Oh yeah, and even with the couple that I'm dealing with now, literally, I think we put in 4 offers now, and they're tough. They're a VA buyer. Everything that Emily's telling you that would be good and strong, these unfortunately are not really over the top cash flowing people. They're asking for just putting down a couple of $1,000, and they're asking for credit towards close for their VA loan. So we've, I get all of that. So I shortened everything on the next offer. I did this and the next offer. I paid for the home warranty on the next offer. Then I finally talked to my lender and I said, you got to help me out here. And he said, waive the contingency, the appraisal contingency, just to get in the game.
Wow. Now, one thing as the buyer's agent, would you talk to the listing agent and say, hey, look at all these that are impending, show it to the appraiser, show the appraiser all the offers that came in close to the 380, let's say, so that you can try and hope to get the appraiser to appraise the property at that price if they see there's ready, willing, and able buyers willing to pay that higher amount?
I just
100%. Go ahead, Deb.
I just sold a property on Lion Street, the one that I was telling you I wrote the letter around.
Mhm.
There were no comps in the area. Single family home, all different. Everybody, paid cash for their house a zillion years ago and stayed put in that area. The comps were like nothing. And we were asking 590. Nothing came close. I actually had the appraiser call me and say, have you had multiple offers? Yes, we had 8. Okay. All over asking? Yes, all in the same price range. Also asked me about, how long the driveway was. Wow, it looks like you can fit a lot of cars. I see there's one pending. This was when Ed was telling us, with movement not to use pendings as a comp. Well, they were asking me about what's pending in the area. And we appraised at, 20,000 over with no comps whatsoever. So yeah, the more information you can give, any appraisers really do want to help you out, and they really do want it to appraise. So the most, if you get the opportunity, the more information you can give them that about is helpful.
Couldn't agree more. That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Especially when there's no comps. Guys, if you don't have comps, they don't have comps.
Right.
Like you're all pulling the same thing. So use everything. I love that you threw that driveway thing in there when he asked. I'm talking I know we're going off book, but like, as you can see, I don't really follow the PowerPoint, so we're just all off book. So when you're talking about appraisals, when you're the listing agent in this market, and I'm sure you heard me on the team meeting, you don't got much to do. Once you get under contract, you got some negotiation to do, and then like, that's it. Your job is close to done. So please show up to the appraisal. Please print out all the comps that you can find. Aida, to your credit, and what Deb was talking about, if I'm on the seller's end and I think that we're like in territory, if it's not a slam dunk on the appraisal, I'm calling every single agent that has a pending listing in that could be a possible comp, and I'm sweet talking them into telling me what they're under contract for. If they're to a point where they've removed all the contingencies, I've never had anyone say no. Or if they're to a point where they've removed the appraisal and the inspection contingency, never really had them say no if all that's left is the loan, especially if they've passed the appraisal. I also asked them how many offers they had, if they were all over asking, exactly what Deb's saying. And I put that in a little spreadsheet, just a tiny little chart. You don't have to be like spreadsheet brain like me. You can write it out in a Word doc, whatever, tiny little chart. And I hand the appraiser a folder with all the comps printed out, even if they're pending, then I have written on top with what's there. It takes you like 2 hours to do this. This is not like hard work during the transaction. And obviously you're going to do it like the day before or the 2 days before, so that as many pendings that can hit sold will by the time you're going to do it. Don't do it too far in advance. You're putting it in a folder and you're handing them any of the pending information. My appraiser was blown away that I had called all the pending listing agents, told him how many offers they had, whether they were all over asking, whether that home appraised at value, and what value that they had, if I got it. Some of them were too early in the transaction where the listing agents weren't willing to share because they still fall out. Totally fine. I'd play it the same way if I was 2 days in. I still called them just in case. Somebody was very forthcoming and did it 2 days, give me everything 2 days in. So you never know. And then I hand them all of that information, as well as all of the offers that came in on my listing. So all of them, like Deb's saying, they're all over ask. You can give them all the offers. It only has to be the first few pages. You don't have to give them the full printout with the purchase price or first few pages of the RPA. Purchase price, any of the cool terms, whatever. Maybe make a little chart for them. I actually think I did make a chart for them of like where they all came in, and if they've removed contingencies, everything. If they've whatever, all the goodies, all the good details. And then the last thing is, if there's been any upgrades to that home, you better have a list of those upgrades and the price. If you've got the brand, whatever it is, you need to have every upgrade in a little chart, Word doc, whatever makes you comfortable, with the price of those upgrades as well. And you're putting all of that in a nice little folder presentation and handing it to the appraiser. And then I also send it electronically too, because they may not look at it. They may want it electronically. And when I do that, they're usually blown away. I've never had somebody be like, I'm not going to look at this ever. So like Deb said, they want to help you.
two things on that. I had a listing here in my building. I live downtown in a high rise. I love that. No termites, no half the repairs that you ever have to deal with. I love selling downtown. But a unit in my building, I listed at 80, probably 75,000 over all of, and easy to comp because, all the floor plans on certain, stacks of 01s and 02s, whatever, they're pretty much the same. They go up about 10,000 depending on, which floor you're on and so on. So I listed at 75,000 over, and the appraiser called me. This was really early on in my career. And the appraiser called me and said, I really want to get you what you want, but I can't come up with this number. And I went ahead, not knowing that I should have done it in advance, and sent him a list of $85,000 worth of upgrades to the unit. Done.
And you got it.
And I got it.
That's
right.
incredible.
So that's so important. And back to adding the offers into the folder. As my husband used to say, my husband's in commercial real estate forever, used to say, I said, what do you think this is worth? And he said, it's worth what the market will pay. So all of a sudden, if nobody's moved, but now I've got 8 people willing to offer $610,000, that pulls a lot of weight with where the market's going, what its value is, and how the bank can go forward on that.
100%. That's my favorite line. I say it a little differently, but a home is worth what someone's willing to pay for it. Period. Because if they're willing to pay for it and overpay for it and gobble up that appraisal shortage and pay for it in cash, that's what it's worth at that point, And I say that to every single buyer because it kind of relieves the pressure from you, right? It relieves that, I don't know how else to describe it. It will work like a charm and they need to hear it, bottom line. And they will start to say it back to you at some point in your conversations with them, which is great. Okay. I'm going to we're getting towards the end. So I want to fly through some of this. So you're managing your buyer's expectations, the days of sleeping on it, kind of over, unless you're working in downtown. I think Deb and I can tell you, sometimes you get a little extra time on those just because of the sheer volume, because downtown has high rises. So it's a little micro market. It's not quite in as much of an inventory crisis as the rest of the industry or rest of the county. So when you're scheduling showings, let me show you a little life hack. Okay, see this? Can you see? I'm putting up my Google Voice. Can you guys see that right now? It's coming up. Hold on. Yeah, you can see the Google Voice. Okay. So this is my Google Voice number because I'm from Philadelphia, so I didn't have a 619 number. So highly, highly recommend. One of my good buddies told me in Ignite, actually, Ricky Silber, he's no longer with our office, but Amanda's husband, was like, dude, if you don't have a 619 number, you have no idea how much business you're going to lose just by not having a 619 number. And I was like, ugh, I hate Google Voice. It sucks. It's an extra app to go into. Didn't want to do it. And now I just totally believe him, bought into it. And so I do all my business on Google Voice. And let me tell you how convenient it is to be able to type out your text messages. Maybe some of you Droid peeps can do it. iPhone, I haven't figured it out. I don't have a Mac, so I've not really tried. But I have an iPhone otherwise. So this is my business number. So anyway, this is just an example of a showing I scheduled this past weekend. And so this whole thing, my name is Emily Holmes and I'm a realtor with Keller Williams Metro. I'm interested in seeing, actually, this is one shortcut. And then this, I have clients interested in, that's another shortcut. And so is this. Because when you guys get rocking, you're going to type those 3 sentences so many times in a text message. Make this, obviously it's not a shortcut on my computer, but when I'm on my phone and I'm on the go, I just type in KWI because that's my Keller Williams intro, okay, on my phone. And if I type the words KWI on my iPhone, I do not know if this worked for Droids, but I assume they have the same type of software, sort of like appealing, easy technology. That just so I just write, hi Janine, KWI, auto-populates all that in there. Next thing, I think I do IHC, so because that's a letter combination that I'm never going to type. There aren't any words that begin with IHC, right? So just get creative on what it means. And that just means I have clients interested in, pops that in there. All I have to do is type the address in And then the last one would be CWP, because I'm never going to, there's no like weird acronym in my life that's CWP. That's going to put the rest in there, and I just have to fill in the day and time. So that's a super easy thing. I've been using this thing basically saying like, I didn't say it here, but because they didn't ask for it. If they're asking for a PED before they'll actually confirm your showing, and your showing is 3 or 4 days from now, that's stupid. But so try to get them to, because the PED is supposed to be, it's about health, right? And how you're feeling that day. So it's supposed to be about that day that you're seeing. It says it on the top of the PED form. Most agents don't know that. If they're asking for one the day, just say, hey, and our broker, caveat your little text message that says, our broker is really, strict about wanting us to send the PED the day of the showing, parentheses, since that's what the top of the PED form says now. Is that okay with you? Question mark. Some of them are going to say, no, I can't confirm the showing without the PED. And so then I send 2 PEDs. I send a PED that day, and then to cover my ass with our brokerage, CYA, I send a PED the day of the showing. It's so annoying, but whatever. Glide is so easy that I can do that, like literally, I shouldn't say this, but at a stoplight. Like Glide is so easy. I can do that as I'm jumping out of the car, having a conversation, walking through downtown, going to the next showing. So there's no excuse for you to be able to have to like send these PEDs. Glide makes your life so much easier when it comes to PEDs. If you're not using Glide, that's just definitely use it. I highly recommend it. Okay, so that's just a little life hack. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint and kind of click through this. We're going to get into how I write an offer, practice scripts. Okay, we'll get to this. So that's the life hack. The other thing I'm going to ask, you can do, this is just a little script for text messaging. I know you just hit the market, but in this, I know you've only been active for X amount of days, but in this market, I've got to ask, any offers in currently? Always. I'm always asking that unless I'm going to pick up the phone and be talking to them, and then I can ask it over the phone. And the reason for that is I want to know how quickly we got to move on that one for my buyers. So I have that knowledge, because now that my buyers are used to that, me delivering that, they're going to ask me at most of the showings, any offers in on this one? If I've forgotten, just shoot the listing agent a text message while you're standing in the house and say, hey, we're here, showing's going well, any offers in currently? Some of them will give you information like Deb said, some will not.
And I suppose, why do you think they might not?
Because they have no idea how to work in this business.
They're ridiculous.
What, Deb?
Because they're ridiculous.
Yeah, they're ridiculous. There's no reason not to say whether or not you have offers, because otherwise you're just like, then you're just going to wait for other offers to come in versus have them come in sooner. Things will blow your mind in this industry, Bernardo. Trust me. And yes, great question. Why would they? We don't know. There's no real reason.
Would there be any reason for them to lie?
And say that they do have them?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my buyers ask this all the time. There would be, like, if they've overpriced it and they're just trying to like, the thing is like, you're going to get to know agents in this industry. 3 years in, I'll recognize names and I'm like, oh, this is going to be a brutal one, But at the same time, you can manage and carry the team no matter who's on the other side. You just can. You'll bring it to the finish line. And there might be motivation for them to lie if they're just a shitty human being, because there are some of those. But I have to operate on the assumption that most agents in this industry have integrity, and that they're not going to do that, because in my mind, if I were to do that, that's going to catch up with me at some point. At some point, or like you say that an offer is where it's not. At some point, Deb and I are going to be like putting an offer in on the same property and realize it serendipitously and catch that person in the act later. It's going to come out at some point. It might take a few years, but you kind of just have to take them at face value, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you, when it comes down to you and you're on that receiving end of that question, when you have a listing, if you want to create urgency, maybe they want to create a sense of urgency. Maybe that's their reason behind the whole thing. You could just say you've had a lot of activity.
Yep.
Had a lot of have lots of interest, lots of activity.
I've had a few verbal threats. That's another thing that people say.
Right.
Or I've been told, yeah, for some reason they call it threats of offers, meaning like, it sounds so negative, but that's not how they mean it. They're like, yeah, we've had a few agents have said they're writing offers, something like that, lots of interest. I think we'll have a few coming in based on the showings X. We've had X amount of showings.
So it sounds like they could lie and say there was activity to create that sense of urgency and prompt a
Well,
buyer.
we've had a lot of activity. I don't know if I'd be saying that if I hadn't had any showings,
Right.
you know, but Deb's talking about like right now you're going to have showings. So Deb's talking about like activity. Activity could mean showings. Activity usually means showings. Like if they have an offer, they're going to say they have an offer. There's just different ways to say it where you can still generate the buzz on your end as the listing agent and not be lying, just kind of like puffing your chest a little. So, okay, so I want to fly through or get through when we're making the offers. So a little checklist. When you're making the offer, the first thing I'm doing is I'm calling the listing agent. Every time. First thing I'm doing, calling the listing agent. What I'm asking again is, hey, just wanted to chat with you, figure out if there's, wanted to learn a little bit more about your seller. I'm also asking again at that point, depending on when the last time was that I asked, if they have any offers in. Because I want to know that when I'm writing my offer. So you're just continuously trying to build rapport. Don't be fake, just be nice, just be kind, make sure they know you're for the win-win. The other thing that I do actually, probably after I get off the phone with them, or maybe as I'm doing the showing or something, is I'll see if I know someone in their brokerage. If I've done a deal with someone in their brokerage, if I have a friend with someone in their brokerage, if I've done a deal with their team leader, even better. If I know their team leader, use it. Especially in this industry, use it all. All you do you guys know how to use HomeSnap?
No.
I don't really do it on a computer, but HomeSnap is the app version of the MLS. It's like a little wonky sometimes, but I just know this now as like my little Bible instead of like Zillow or Redfin, or I would never use any of those. So HomeSnap in here, let me see if I can show you. If you go to HomeSnap, which you should download now, and you go to the bottom that says agents, you can go to find an agent. You can search them this way, find an agent, search an agent. You just pop their name in there. You can see all the ones I've looked up recently. You can even go, let's say you're going through the house. So let's say, so here's the one I want to do the deal on. So you can pull up the listing. If you scroll a little bit more, it's going to show you who the listing agent is. And you're going to click on their name. You can see how many deals they've done in the last 2 years. If you scroll, you can see where the deals were. And I always check that because I want to know how green they are. And then you can click the real estate company right here on their brokerage. And that shows you everybody that's in their brokerage. Now, this is a really small brokerage. So there's only 3 people. So I don't know anybody in here. But if it's like a big block, like Mission Valley big block, another KW, forget it. Like I'm leveraging that all day, every day. I don't care if I've done one transaction. If it happens to be someone that knows that person, and it was a great transaction, you gotta be sure that that person's gonna vouch for you in a positive light. Because I've definitely done transactions with people who have asked me to vouch for them. And I'm thinking, yeah, right. And so I'll figure out a way around that. And we don't have enough time for that. But so I would absolutely, and I've done it at least 5 times in the last 2 years where I've asked that previous agent that I had such a good transaction with, especially if it was like a difficult one that we navigated, to reach out and call that agent that I'm trying to get my offer accepted on. So definitely use that. As long as you're confident, they'll vouch for you. And the main question I'm asking the listing agents on this phone call is the first question that kind of breaks the ice is how quickly do their sellers want to close? If it's vacant, I'll be like, so I see that, it's vacant. So I'm assuming you want quick as close possible. That's kind of how I roll each time. If it's not, or they don't state it in the MLS, ask what their sellers need. Don't know if they're buying a replacement property, but it might not be contingent because they didn't put that in the MLS. Maybe they need a rent back. And if you don't know what a rent back is, we can get into that. But it's basically when you close the escrow and then the sellers remain in possession of the home. They stay in the home for a week, 2 weeks, up to 60 days or 59 days. And they basically rent because your buyers are now the owners, and the previous owners become your buyers, the new owners, tenants. Okay. There are forms we fill out with that. Call me if you need help on that. But I have like the offer that I showed you, the really nice email from the listing agent. We gave them a free 29-day rent back. I've never given a free 29-day rent back in my life. And that's the one where the buyer knew the seller. But that's the times that we're in right now. And that's what the listing agent specifically said would help out the sellers. So we did it because my buyers could, right? It's an investment property. If it was a primary residence and they can't afford to give that, don't give it, but then manage your buyer's expectations around the likelihood of them getting their offer accepted. Because those particular sellers were buying a different property down the street and they needed the extra time. Your kiddos, whatever. Is there anything funky? And we can get into rent backs too at a different time. Call me if you want to, I'll explain all of that to you over the phone. Is there anything funky in the house? If it doesn't specifically say appliances, you can start to ask about that. I also always say anything funky in the house that the sellers want to keep or not keep. One of the most important questions I'll always ask is there anything we can do to make our offer more competitive? Either something that's in the other offers that the sellers don't like, or something that's not in the other offers that the sellers do want. And then I'm silent. And they start to talk usually. Sometimes they'll be like, no, it's pretty cut and dry. It's really just down to price and terms. Okay. You can talk to them about shortening contingencies, which I recommend. I don't know the last time I didn't shorten a contingency. Deb, I'm sure you're on this with me. This train. I don't remember the last time I did a longer than a 10-day inspection contingency. Literally I don't know if I've ever done it. Maybe once. Find out, it's your lender's decision how short you can pull in the appraisal or the loan contingency. And we're going to get to the appraisal in 1 second. Sorry, Bernardo, go ahead.
I found that throughout the webinar, I had trouble following any conversation on terms or contingencies. Maybe because we haven't really focused on that yet. So what would you recommend for me to do to learn more about that? Like, I mean, at a basic level.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I'm going to actually send you guys what's called home buying helpful hints. I don't care if you rip it off. It's a fluid Word document that I continuously update for my buyers. It's going to go into a lot on the 3 contingencies. So just read it. If you have questions, just call me.
And also don't
It's
forget
12 o'clock.
don't forget to take your contract classes.
Yes, that's a good one too. With Broker Bob. Thank you, Deb.
Yeah.
That'll help you. He'll go pretty much section by section through the residential purchase agreement, which is where, Bernardo, you're going to reference those contingencies.
Gotcha. And thank you. That is good advice. I know that having gone through the contract classes as someone who's not done a transaction and just got started, it was like so much mumbo jumbo.
Totally.
I know that will sink in a little bit better when I have context to apply it to. But right now I'm at a point where I'm like I need to go from smaller to larger.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like from simplicity to complexity.
You are not out of ordinary. This is exactly what every new agent goes through. It's like information overload. The best advice I can give you is don't try to learn it all before you start a transaction. Start showing property, start getting listings, and you're going to learn on the go. And you're going to make mistakes. I could tell you so many funny stories, and it doesn't matter because you're still going to be successful if you stick with it and you continue doing your daily 10-4. Deb, you look like you want to say something, and then I just want to ask everybody.
Yeah, everybody's not Emily. And who was it that said that they love contracts? Was it you, Madison?
Yeah, I enjoy contracts.
Yeah, so I got to share with you, for the first 2 years of writing contracts, I was blind. I literally would look at a contract, and I know Emily could vouch for me. I'd look at a contract and my eyes would go sideways and I would just be absolutely blind. Like none of the words made any sense to me whatsoever. And then just all of a sudden, through and through, you just keep going. And you know what? Use your TC too. I would use Dana. I would write a full contract and send it to Dana and say, can you do me a favor? Check this for me. Send it to Mark Miller or Robert or Emily or me and say, hey, I'm just writing this offer. Can you check, or your coach, check this for me? I think that's what your coaches are supposed to be doing right now anyway, checking your contracts. Use all of your resources because you're not supposed to know. You weren't born with this information. So.
And this isn't what they teach on the test, which is crazy, right?
Right.
We're learning all that crap you're never going to use. I'm going through continuing education right now. It's like due today, and I don't know, I probably have 40 hours left. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? The shit about water rights, get out of here. Anyway, so you didn't learn any of that. So you're going to learn by doing for sure. So what I want to ask you, because we're already 2 minutes over time, I want to quick finish this list, and there's only a couple things left. And then I wanted to give you a couple levers to pull, including the Aida's question. Do you guys want me to run through a contract? And feel free, if anybody has to drop off, no worries. This is going to be live. I don't know if I guess it's recorded too. Is it, Deb? Or do you guys know?
It's on YouTube right now.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
But
So it'll
however, it might not be on YouTube for several hours, or maybe
Okay.
until tomorrow. It's just
Okay, so if anybody wants to hang around, I'll run through a contract quick. But let me just get to these last couple things. If you have to drop off, absolutely no worries. Okay, I know people have schedules. So the last couple things are, this is my favorite line too, and I always ask this. And I always do it like this. This is my script for it. This is when I'm going in to ask them about the price of the offers. Okay. I know everybody runs their business differently, and I don't know if you run this, so feel free if after I ask this question, you tell me that this isn't how you operate, but I have to ask, do you share, do you have anywhere that you can share where the offer prices have come in, or at least a range? Silence, and then let them answer. So I can type that out if you want it. I pretty much say it the same way. You're always saying this over the phone. Do not hide behind technology. You have to get to know these listing agents, or you will not get your offers accepted. So you're always having all these things that I'm saying over the phone. So I don't know if this is, I know everybody operates differently. I'm not sure if this is how you run your business, but I was just wondering if there's any way that you could share where the offer prices are, or at least an offer price range. 75% of the time in my experience, they're going to say no. I share it. When I'm the listing agent, I share it. What do you, Deb?
I do.
Yeah, because the bottom line is your fiduciary duty is to the seller, and your job for the seller as a listing agent is to get them the most amount of money for their property with the best terms. So if I'm already 20K over ask, if the only time I might not share it is if I'm under asking. If the only offer I have is under asking, I might not say, or I might be like, it's close to asking. Close is relative, baby. Like if it's an $850,000 house and I have it at 840, that's close to asking in my book. It might not be in Deb's book. It really depends on the person, right? So close to asking, if it was like 800, I might not say close to asking. That seems a little off. It really depends on the house, the situation. Every transaction is different. And I'm not like I said, I'm a rule follower. I'm like I'm a little too honest and not enough aggressive maybe, but there's still a very successful way to run your business like that. So what I would say is you can say you're close to asking if you're under. If I'm 20K over, do you think I want an offer at list price? No, that's a waste of my time. That's a waste of my seller's time to have to like counter that up, see if those people are even in the game. What if that's their max? I would be telling that buyer's agent, because it's a lot of time to write an offer, guys. You're gonna get through this, and to package it up the way I do and the way you likely do, it takes time. You'll get way faster at it as time goes along, especially if you're writing multiple for one buyer, then the next one will get easier. But I just always, I give it when I'm the listing agent, because I just want to make sure that buyer can meet or beat it. The last thing that I'll ask the listing agent, well, title and escrow. It's a seller's market. Sellers picking title and escrow. So you always want to ask who the listing agent likes to use. If they use who you use, talk about it. Oh, awesome. That's who I use, WFG title. I don't make it up if I don't use them. If I use them, I use them. Foundation escrow, A+ escrow. Oh, wonderful. That's who I use. Who do you use in there? And then you're just connect is the name of the game. Go ahead, Deb.
Well, also, you want to put it in there too, just like, of course, your expertise level, but they're going to counter, if you put in seller's choice, they're going to counter you on it. So that's just another deal you have to worry about in your getting countering that, and answering it back. So why bother? Just put that in the offer originally, and then you don't have to deal with that.
100%. And you'll sound like you know what you're doing. If you're saying, hey, who do you like to use for title and escrow, or would you prefer I put seller's choice? They're going to get that you get
They'll be like, oh, I really appreciate that. The other thing, and I learned this the hard way recently, I used to confirm the seller's names, what was listed in the tax records, to make sure that that was the seller of record. And I just got out of that habit. And then a couple weeks ago, I went to write an offer and the husband had passed away. And they were, I think that's why they were selling. I don't pry. I don't ask those questions anymore because I had a listing agent that I knew well fly off the handle about it. So I do not ask those because it was a divorce, and I just don't ask those questions anymore. And I explain to my buyers, it's not our business unless it comes up organically from the seller or from the listing agent. And so I think that the husband had died recently, and I did not want to, I just didn't want to go with that wife's grief. I didn't want to put that name in front of her on the letter to the sellers, on the offer. They would have had to counter it out anyway. So we redid the whole offer, and my buyers were very amenable to that. And the listing agent even said, oh, I really don't think it'll cause any issues. I don't think she'll take pause. She's okay. And I redid it anyway. So anyway, just a thought. I would ask what the seller of record is and just say, so that I can get it right for the offer and for the letter from the buyers. That's it. They'll know why you need it. So just confirm and pull it from the tax records and say, is this correct? Don't make them have to type it out. They can just go thumbs up if it is. Do their work for them, because a lot of the agents don't want to do their own work anyway. I'm sorry, you can tell I'm a little jaded. Okay, so if anybody has to drop, no worries, but these are a couple of these levers. Aida, we're going to talk about yours first in case you have to drop. Let me make sure you're still here because I can only see a certain, okay. So if somebody's removing their appraisal contingency, it's and you're like apples to apples on everything else. If you're the seller, whose offer are you going to take? Probably that person's, like the person that removes their appraisal contingency. So it's really tough to compete with that. The only thing I can think of that might help you stand out, especially if you know the appraisal is not going to be too far off, is bye Melissa, no worries. I will totally, yes, I look forward to meeting you in person too. And I will totally send you all this stuff via email. So Aida, what I would say is the only other way is maybe your buyers are comfortable covering a certain amount of the appraisal shortage. So maybe you say up front, hey, buyers willing to cover appraisal shortage in cash up to X dollar amount. Maybe they've got another $3,000 to spend or $5,000 to spend or $10,000 to spend if this property is that important to them. That's kind of one of the only ways to compete with a no appraisal contingency in. Or, as we were saying before, depending on what your lender says and how strong you feel about the comps, you could also guide your buyers to remove the appraisal contingency also. Technically, are there other ways out of the contract? Sure. Again, is it the most ethical? No. Are other people doing it? Yes. That's how I'm going to pitch that part. So yeah, just not removing your appraisal contingency, covering up to a certain amount of the shortage, or going ahead and guiding them through that it's not still extremely dire if they were to remove the appraisal contingency also, because it's extremely hard to compete with. I agree. And you'll be surprised when people miss out on one or two based on that. On the third one, they'll start removing it. Ish. Okay, escalation clauses. I don't know if you guys know about these. I know we've talked about them. That was actually what this seller's agent just called about. This listing agent on Hudson, he straight up said, and I quote, "Of all the agents, you're the best and the one I want to work with." That was the call that I had and why I came back to the call late. And I apologize for being late, but I did want to let you guys know we've developed such rapport because this was coming soon. And I started talking to this guy when it first started coming soon, only via text. And we've had one phone call. So I'm developing a lot of this rapport randomly on this one via text instead of phone. He calls me today and he says, hey, the best way for us, you're the front runner. The best way for us to get your offer accepted would be for your buyers to potentially pay off the solar loan. It's $8,700. They know my buyers have the cash to do it. They know my buyers are willing to come up in price. And I know my buyers are going to do this to get this house. So when you develop rapport, they're going to give you these little tidbits to help your offer stand out to the sellers in the end. He also mentioned that the sellers love the buyers from their letter. So it's not just me on this one. And my buyers are definitely willing to go to put their money where their mouth is because they've already lost out on two. Okay, so that's what happened then. And the solar thing, that's so creative. Yes, 100%. My buyers can do that. They're in a little bit of a higher price point. They're at the 8. They're going to be, this house will probably go for around 825, 850. So they're totally fine covering that $8,700. I already know that. Normally, I would say I have to speak with my buyers in that scenario. I just already know they're willing to cover it. So I'll talk to them in a bit, and just because they're at work. So the other thing that I asked him, and I always ask the listing agent, you're going to ask them if they're comfortable with the letter to the buyers or letter to the sellers, because that's all weird now. So just make sure, because I've recently had listing agents tell me don't send it. Okay. So you're going to ask on the initial call, you're going to ask if they're comfortable with your buyers writing a letter to their sellers. The second thing you're going to ask if they're comfortable with, because it's honestly 50-50, is if they like escalation clauses. You can ask it on the first call when you're talking about the offer, or you can ask it on the counter call, which is what I did on our break. An escalation call, you're just asking like, hey, I know people all, the script is, hey, I know people feel differently about them. How do you feel about escalation clauses? And this guy was like, oh yeah, I haven't seen them used a ton, but I don't think I've ever had one on mine, which is kind of crazy because he does do some business. I showed you his stats. And he's like, but I'm totally for them. And I think that would be a great way to get your offer accepted. Now, you still have to have your buyers talk to an attorney. You still have to talk to Mark Miller and Robert beforehand to do this, because it has to be written in the right way, right? Where nobody can get in trouble later. The whole hesitation behind these is twofold. Lately, what I've heard is listing agents want to level the playing field for the buyers, and they don't want to give anybody an unfair advantage. I've heard that way too many times lately. I get it and I don't get it, but anyway, that's their feeling. The second thing is, it looks like the listing agent and the buyer's agent are colluding to drive the price up to get a higher commission. That's the ethics behind it, of why you need to get your buyers to talk to a real estate attorney to figure out how this needs to get put in there, if that's what it's gonna take on the counter to win the deal. And I never do an escalation clause without a maximum price. So the way you would write it would be, this is not verbatim, I'd have to go back in an offer, but the way you would write it would be buyers to increase purchase price by $5,000 over highest confirmed offer up to $850,000. Okay. So you're saying we'll beat out any other offer by $5,000 up to a maximum of $850,000. That means if someone bids $850,000 or $855,000, we're out, right? Because we put a maximum on. I know what the house is worth to my buyers. I find out what that maximum is from them. But up to that amount, they're good. You can do it for $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, whatever. I know my buyers, I have a feeling they're going to go $5,000 over.
Hey, Emily.
Yeah.
How often do you use that? I got to tell you, I think I've used an escalation clause once, only because I'm not familiar with using it as a tool. How often do you use that?
I would say I've probably used it 3 or 4 times in my entire career of now on my 4th year. Okay. So not very often. Right. But I do know that my buyers will be so bummed if they don't get this house. Bye, Bernardo. And so we're going to use it on this one for sure, I would assume. Okay. I also just have to talk to Robert first, because there's just so many issues happening with them. So just one thing. And then so Madison and Aida, the other thing that I've been doing lately, besides the free rent backs, covering the appraisal shortage, removing an appraisal contingency, possibly an escalation clause on this one, is some of my buyers are willing to pay for their own home warranty. That's just one lever you can pull. It's not really usually countered back by the seller, but if it's totally apples to apples, them taking on that extra, $450 to $650 cost might move the needle. If the sellers really don't know which way to go, that might be the nail in the coffin. The other thing that I've been doing lately, and it's really hardly anything, is taking the termite inspection onto my side. Just the inspection, not saying we're going to pay for repairs up front, because we don't know what that amount is, but basically saying that the buyers will handle paying for and scheduling the termite inspection. If you get in good with a termite company, a few years in, they're not even going to charge you for your inspections if they know they're going to get the work on the back end. And even if they do charge you, we're talking about $75 to $99. Not an expensive thing. I do that depending on the client. If I really like them, like Deb said, I'll pay for their home warranty. Maybe if it's if they've been with me a while or higher price point, or I just love them as humans, I'll totally do that. I'll totally pay for the termite inspection, something like that. I didn't used to do that starting out, but now if they're a repeat client or we've had a tough time, yeah, sure. I'll handle something like that depending on where it's going to fall price point wise. It just takes one logistical thing off of the seller's plate when it comes to termite. It's not necessarily the $99. It's the fact that like we're going to just slam that into our inspection period and deal with the scheduling of it, which is nice.
What is the average the cost is? It's $99 for the termite inspection?
Yeah, termite inspections are anywhere between $75 to $99. There's actually even a company out there, I think, Deb, it's called Twin Termite. Is that what it is? That does free ones? Yeah, so I think it's Twin Termite. They're tough because they're booked out kind of farther because they do free ones, but they'll do free termite inspection, free termite inspections. I don't use them because I think you maybe get what you pay for, but I have, I think, once or twice in the past. The other thing, and I wish I had said this earlier, but I will try to type all this out no later than tomorrow, all my thoughts and levers to pull, is I almost always either guide my buyers to, or I will pay the $100 or $150, whatever it is, it's one of those two, to rush order or expedite, it's called, the appraisal. Always. I do not wait for appraisals anymore in this market because it can take, 7 calendar days to get on the appraiser's calendar and then another 7 calendar days to get the report back. No, not with these prices right now. I want that thing back within a week because I want to know if this deal is going to fall apart, right? I don't want to spend any more time with this. I don't want to mess with my buyers anymore. So especially if I'm removing an appraisal contingency or offering to pay a shortage, I'm having that lender order that thing within 1 to 2 business days of offer acceptance, and then I'm putting a rush on it. So you're normally on that appraiser's calendar within 2 to 3 business days, and you have the report back within 24 hours. Every time.
And you pay that?
I pay it. If I really like them, I pay it. If not, I'll guide them to pay it, show them why it's worth it.
Do you gotta put that in? Does that get paid out of escrow?
It does, or Amanda will charge me directly.
Okay.
She'll just send you like a little online form and you just click a button and put in your credit card.
And do you let them know on the offer that you're going to be rushing?
Yep. So let me show you. It's in the body of that email that I'm going to send.
Uh-huh.
And I will pull up the offer as well. So it's here so that they don't have to look in the offer and they might miss it. No appraisal contingency. Okay, so this one we remove the appraisal contingency, but whether I remove it or not, this line is always in the email. You can see the screen?
Yep.
So it says, let me blow it up a little. Lender will order appraisal within 1 to 2 business days after offer acceptance on rush order. And now I can't find my little toggle, but on rush order paid for by me, I think is how it says. And I'll put whoever it's paid for, either me or sometimes, like right now I have one of my lenders, we're working with our clients on the other one, the Iris one. She's going to pay it because she loves them. We love them. We've been working for them for a while. So the lender can pay it. The buyer can pay it. I can pay it. I wasn't paying for this type of stuff in the beginning of my career, guys. I'm not telling you have to do this stuff, but it is kind of a crazy market right now. Just different levers you can pull. Also, do not write 1 to 2 business days after offer acceptance as far as the ordering, unless you've checked with the lender. And that's when they're going to order it. Make sure you're stating facts in this email.
Hey, will all lenders go along with this?
I haven't had one say no yet.
Okay.
Out of my 4 that I prefer to use, I've all had them all, it all work out. So, okay. And the last thing, and then I'm going to ask you guys if you want me to roll through this, or I will maybe just do it and record it and you guys can watch it later. So the last thing that I would say is if you know your buyer, number one, as I think it was Aaron or somebody mentioned earlier, it might've been Bernardo, that all California residential purchase agreements are technically as is, which is correct. That's always something you're going to tell your buyers up front. That's going to be in the little helpful home buying helpful hints that I'll send out. And to reiterate or like explain that more, it's the seller does not have to respond to a request for repairs, let alone agree to do anything for you. Repairs, seller credit, price reduction, termite, any of it. Okay. When it's a VA loan, it's a little bit different. They're more inclined to take care of the termite because the buyer technically in the state of California can pay for it, but I don't know that I would ever guide anyone to. I have had VA buyers do it when they were desperate for a house, but then they're basically doing termite repairs on a home they don't own. Okay. Because it has to be done before close of escrow. So it's a little dicey. Anyway, there's no guarantee they're going to get anything back. They need to like this house enough where they're going to take this house, no matter, provided it appraises or there's, you know, you've agreed on appraisal stuff. They're going to take this house, whether they get a dime back for repairs or not, unless something is too major, and then they can just walk away. Okay. Sorry, my dog just ran in the room. And unless it's too major, and then they can just walk away. But they can't be banking on you getting them $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000 credits towards their closing costs at repair time, because it might not happen, especially in this market, if they had multiple offers, because they have a backup offer. And if it appraises and they have inspections, they can just send that appraisal and all those inspections to those backup offers. I've had this happen recently too. When an appraisal came in 15 grand under, they said, hey, I called this other agent and their buyer's willing to come up with the cash for 15K. I sent them all the inspection reports and the appraisal. So you guys either have to come up with 15K or cancel the contract and we're moving on to the next buyer. And so my guy came up with 15K because otherwise he was losing the house. And I strong armed that guy to the nines. It was he who cares the least wins, basically, in that situation. So what I would do, my last lever is you could reiterate as is. It's not written as is. It's like basically something along, Mark Miller has written me the sentence, but it's something along the lines of like, seller not to do any repairs, you know, during escrow or something like that. Basically saying that you're going to do your inspections, you're going to see what happens. And as long as there's nothing so major that you're not uncomfortable moving forward, or not something like unknown, that you're going to move forward and you're not going to send in a request for repairs. You're not going to ask the seller to do anything. So Aida, that might be one way, one lever that you could pull. If somebody else is removing an appraisal contingency and your buyers aren't comfortable doing that, but they think, especially if it's like a condo or whatever, where there's fewer issues usually, there's not as many foundation issues in condos because it's a big building. There's not roof issues because that's not on them. I mean, the roof maintenance is at least on the HOA. That's one lever that you could pull. You could basically reiterate that's an as-is sale, which basically tells the sellers up front, hey, we like this house so much, we're not going to ask you for a dime during repairs. Okay. Because that other person that's removing that appraisal contingency, they might be doing it and then on the back end trying to make it up with a huge request for repairs towards their buyer's closing costs, right? To kind of like even it out.
Okay.
So that's one other lever, other than, you know, you doing the shortage up to X amount or convincing your buyers to remove the appraisal contingency, knowing that there's still ways out of the contract. That's kind of your third way, is to maybe go as is.
Perfect.
Okay. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I said perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So I know I told Bernardo we'll do the comps later. We've kind of gone over some creative ways to structure. There's a few other things in the arsenal we haven't gotten to, and I don't want to keep you guys any longer. So does anybody want me to like record this, whether now, or I can run through this? I've got time. If you want me to run through an actual offer, it'd probably take me 15 minutes to show you everything, or we can just cut it and then I can do a video and record it and you guys can watch it later on your own time. What would you prefer? Probably to cut it, right? You guys.
You did a video this way if I needed to watch it over again?
Yeah, I'll try to do a screen recording and then I'll upload it somehow to something. I don't know. I'll ask my assistant how to do it. That's her forte. But yeah, if you guys want to hang on, Madison, what's your preference? Totally up to you.
I don't mind either way. I could hang on and watch you do this. If you want to keep you might as well just keep it on the YouTube video.
Yeah, and then it'll just
instead of making a new video.
Yeah. So Aida, if you want to, and Madison, chime in with any questions as I'm going. But if you want to drop off, Aida, I'll just keep it going on this YouTube video that's been recording the whole time, and you can watch it at your leisure.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for joining. Okay, so Madison, have you filled out a contract yet?
No.
Okay, cool. So start to finish. So I showed you the seller letter to the, letter from the buyers to the seller, the proof of pre-approval letter from the lender, making sure they've done all their due diligence, not just a pre-qualification letter, full on pre-approval, credit's been pulled, and then obviously their proof of funds showing how much money they've got in the bank. Mm-hmm. I use an app or a program on the internet called DocHub, DOCHUB, to redact the account numbers.
Okay.
Your lenders will also, if you ask them to redact it, they'll totally do it. But if it's like late at night and you got to get something done, I'll just pop it into Doc Hub and I'll redact the account numbers myself. It's super self-explanatory, Doc Hub. It's just dochub.com. Okay, so the offer packet is going to be a few different forms put together, and I'll show you where the actual residential purchase agreement cuts off and where I've added like another document. So this is the front page of the residential purchase agreement packet that's in the zip forms that you'll pull up. So you'll start it. Have you gone through zip forms yet?
Yeah, I mean, I did the contracts class, and I've done some stuff with coaching, so I have like seen this form before.
Perfect. Cool. So we're going to get more into like the granular, how to kind of like get good stuff in your offer versus the legal jargon, because you've gone through the contracts class. And that's a better place for people to learn that anyway, because it's more broken down by Broker Bob. So this, as you know, is the AD, just describing agency relationships, you know, dual agency and everything like that. It's embedded into the offer, so you can't take it out even if you wanted to. This is just something they need to sign. So you're going to send this whole thing over to the listing agent. So signed by my buyers and me. That's just the second page, just legal jargon. This is the one that Deb was talking about earlier, the Fair Housing and Discrimination Advisory. This is a new form, as you can see, as of October 20th. Hold on. Sorry, my dog is like nonstop licking. So this is a new form, and this is a good one to read through just to familiarize yourself. This is kind of what she was referencing with regards to the buyer's letter to the seller, love letter to the sellers as well. And so this is a 2-pager. Again, it's signed by buyers and the sellers. This one is the one that we're waiting on a counter on that guy just called about. So we don't have, the sellers haven't signed it yet. And then the PRBS is possible representation of more than one seller, one buyer or seller. So this is used on both sides also. And this is just saying like, I might have buyers looking for the same type of property, or I might have 2 sellers selling a home in the same neighborhood that might be similar. That's it. You just have to cover yourself. These are all embedded. Wire fraud advisory. This is huge. Like there's just so much wire fraud going on. So you just, I would, in addition to sending this over, because it's embedded, it has to go. I would call this out, and I always call this out in my process when I get into escrow before they wire any money. I'll send that type of email over to you guys as well, where basically, I'm just going to give you my templates of like how I roll through a transaction on the buy side, because it's much more email. It's kind of your time as the buyer's agent. So you're going to just caution them to call their escrow company before they wire any funds. That's it. Like if they email over the instructions, they need to pick up the phone. I've had buyers be down to the wire and they almost wired 60 grand to like a different country, because they got an email that looked exactly like it came from the escrow agent, signature, everything, and just one thing was different in the email address. So it looked like it came from that escrow officer, everything. And they almost wired it to who knows, but they caught it and they called the escrow agent like I told them to do. And so they were literally, it was like the day of closing that would have fouled up, and it was Christmas Eve. So that would have been the worst Christmas ever. So, okay. So this is the offer. A lot of this is pre-populated. When you go into zip forms, the very first thing I do when I'm going to fill out an offer is fill out the cover sheet. Have you seen that yet?
Yeah, and then it'll just like, fill in all of the...
Pre-populates all of this. Do the MLS Connect. So you link the MLS number to it. It'll pre-populate all the stuff for the listing agent. All this stuff pretty much gets in there. If it doesn't, you can manually type it in. Make sure that these license numbers are correct as you go through, because oftentimes those aren't populated in the MLS, and if you're using the same offer, like the second time for those same set of clients, you're doing another offer because your first one wasn't accepted, let's say, if the new listing agent's brokerage DRE number isn't in the MLS, it's going to leave the old one. So you always just want to like double check that these 2 numbers are correct. Usually yours, you're going to know by heart. So anyway, you're gonna already have pre-populated in the price. You'll check on the parcel number, all that jazz. This already all fills in the date prepared. You can fill that in the cover sheet. I do fill this in here, days after acceptance. There might be a place to fill it in on the cover sheet. It's just one of the things I'm used to filling in here.
And that number, you talk to your lender to make sure that.
Yep. You ask your lender how fast you can close. Yep. So you're going to say like, what's the shortest you can close? And they're going to give you that. And then what I often do also, they'll say, oh, 25 is comfortable. 21 would be like aggressively uncomfortable, but we could do it. Do what you need to do because you just want to get into contract. Realistically, they're going to push super hard if you know your lenders well, and they're going to close on time. I've rarely had it be a lender's fault to close late, like maybe never. Even if we were on their aggressive timeline. Don't do anything like lower than what they say, but if you need to go low to get the offer accepted and that's like the lowest they can go the lowest they can go. They're doing it for somebody. They'll do it for you. So the other thing is if you're going with their like comfortability marker, I'll do 25 days up here and then down here, which I'll scroll back up. See number 3 here, close of escrow shall occur 25 days after offer acceptance or earlier. So that just opens up the door that we can close before 25 days. And then you don't have to do a separate addendum or anything. You may very well 90% of the time still close on day 25, but sometimes you're going to close on day 24, 23, and you don't have to do anything extra later for escrow, which is beautiful. And it's also saying like, hey, we probably can get this done faster. So it's a little bit more incentivizing to the seller to accept it. Here, you're going to click the seller, representing the buyer, unless you're doing an inner office, like a metro to metro transaction. And then I think you're supposed to click like both buyer. Well, no, it's like this would be both buyer and seller dual agent because it's technically dual agent because these would both say Keller Williams San Diego Metro. But then you as the salesperson, if it's not you and you, listing agent, buyer's agent, dual ending or double ending, then it's going to still be over here for the actual salesperson. So your thing would switch if you do a metro deal to here and here, but unless you're double ending the deal, you're always going to be over here for the actual agent. Initial deposit, you can't go more than 3% here. So that's what my buyers have chosen to do because it's an 810 offer. So back in the day, a year ago, I was telling people like, you only need to do 1%. 1% initial deposit is plenty. Usually people do between 1% and 3%. And that's what I was telling them to do. Nowadays, I'm guiding them much more towards 2% or 3%, just because it shows how much skin they have in the game. And if they are well funded and they're putting down 5%, 10%, 20%, and you know they have the money liquid in their account, there's no harm in doing it because you're not going to let them breach a deadline and you're not going to let their initial deposit ever go into jeopardy. So as you can see, these guys are putting down 3%. Is everybody doing that? No. Will it be the clinch pin? I don't know. The clincher? I don't know. But if they can do more than 1, go for it. You're basically just paying it now versus later because it's part of your initial or part of your down payment, not over and above. Here, the loan is obviously these guys are putting 30% down. So I just quickly do the math, 810, whatever 70% of 810 is, and that's what this number is. This section here, Broker Bob might have covered this. You just want to get this from your lender. And it's not what their interest rate is. It's just another fail safe of like, if the market shifts, can you see it?
Yeah, he said do like go up like a 0.25% in case the market shifts.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. If that's what he's saying. So then you don't have to ask your lender, which is great. I still do, but sometimes I guess if they don't answer fast enough. So that's that. If you were going to like cover, if you needed like closing cost coverage or something, which people have been referencing, especially for like VA buyers or FHA, whatnot, that would go in here in this additional financing terms section. So it would just say seller to cover $5,000 up to, I would put up to, by the way, always on that one. Seller to cover up to $5,000 of buyer's recurring and non-recurring closing costs. And that's how it get worded. If you ever have questions on that, just call me. I'm going to post my number after this. And you can find it in HomeSnap, obviously. So I always click this button, verification of down payment. Obviously the verification would be attached. That's your pre-approval letter. No, lies. That's your proof of funds. So that was at the top. This one over here, letter attached for the loan, that's your pre-approval letter. So I do not send offers without pre-approval letters or proof of funds. I just don't do it. You have to have it in there. As a listing agent, I wouldn't really be seriously considering anyone that didn't send it over because I just wouldn't think that they were actually able to buy the house. And then, sorry, this is just one of my lenders. Okay. So this one, we remove the appraisal contingency, as you can see here, which not every buyer of mine is doing that, but I am shortening it always. So it's standard 17 days. I pretty much bring this down to a maximum of 14. Most of my lenders, because we're rushing it and paying the expedite fee, are comfortable putting 10 or 12 days here if we're not removing it. The other thing, and there's much more like stuff to fill in on these first couple pages, and then the rest is legal jargon, so we'll fly through the rest. Let me know if you have any questions. With the loan contingency removal, so the three contingencies are the inspection, the appraisal, and the loan. The loan contingency also is within the lender's purview. So you're talking to the lender about the appraisal contingency, you're talking to the lender about the close of escrow days, and you're talking to the lender about the loan contingency days. So I always shorten the loan contingency as well. I don't even think I've written any offer keeping it at the standard of 21. Like back in the day, we were writing offers, all of our offers were for 21. So then you're not removing the last contingency until the last day of escrow, which can happen, but it's rare. So the maximum I would do here would be 17. A lot of my lenders can do it between 10 to 14. But again, we never want to put the buyer in a compromising position or make the lender be uncomfortable with the timeline. So that's up to them to dictate. I just let them dictate appraisal, loan contingency, and close of escrow. And then if I'm going to remove the appraisal contingency, that just also needs to be a conversation with the lender on plan of attack on the back end. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Okay, so down here, there's a couple of attachments that get auto-populated. This one ends up down here, ABAD is attached. I leave that there because it's too long to fill in one of these lines. And then this one is down here and I bump it up here all the time just because I'm OCD. And then the buyers, this is always pre-checked. That's embedded in the RPA. There's nothing you can do about it. And I always send this because this is the way I was taught from my launch coach. I've only had one agent tell me that I was crazy for sending this in advance, but we'll get to that. That's at the end. It's just, you'd barely have to fill anything out. So for here, as I said in the letter, I'm putting this in the offer and in the body of the email. Sorry, not the letter, the body of my email to the agent. Lender to order the appraisal on expedite/rush order within 1 to 2 business days after offer acceptance. Buyer's agent to pay for expedite fee. So again, one more thing that you're talking with your lender about, whether you have an appraisal contingency or not, if there's a loan, you still have to have an appraisal. So you're still having an appraisal no matter what, even though I've removed the loan or the appraisal contingency, sorry, on this offer, I'm still going to have an appraisal for my buyer because I have to. They're doing a 70% loan through one of my preferred lenders. So I'm going to pay the 150 because I love these people. It's an it's going to end up probably $825 price point if we get it. When we get it, hopefully. And the lender, I've asked him how quickly he's going to order it. And that's why I have 1 to 2.
And lenders generally, if you have a plan of action, they will agree to remove the appraisal contingency.
Yeah, as long as they don't feel uncomfortable about the fact that, everyone's doing it. If you know that it's going to be like wildly if you can like already call that it's never going to appraise anywhere near what your final offer price is, you need to be having a conversation with those buyers and make sure that they're likely either very willing to cover that shortage in cash or they're okay walking away if there's something else major. But that's another reason that I want to expedite the appraisal. Yeah, so the lender has to buy in, but that's much more on your purview. They're not really going to tell you no. The other fail-safe, if you're removing the appraisal contingency, the other reason that I expedite it is I want that back before I'm finished and have to remove my inspection contingency. If you get my drift. Because I want to have another way, like no matter what happens, I want to have another way out of this contract. And then I also have the loan one as the final fail-safe. The loan is almost always the last contingency to be removed. So the lender can, if worse comes to worse, I've never had to have anybody do this, but could deny the loan and it doesn't travel with the person. Again, not doing this a ton because it's not the most ethical, but people are doing that. So down here, this is also the same area where you would put a rent back. These people don't need it because they're moving to Austin, Texas in 10 days. But if they needed a rent back, this is where I would put it. You can always call me to figure out how to word it, but it would just basically be like sellers to rent back from buyers for free or at no cost, something like that, up to 29 days after close of escrow or something like that. Down here, you're always going to put that the seller is going to pay for the natural hazard disclosure report, always clicking environmental, and always seller's choice. There's a bunch of companies out there. It doesn't really matter who they use. Over here, I used to have this in the seller's bucket all the time. But like I said, is it super impactful? Maybe not. Maybe it's just the opportunity cost of the fact that they're clearly getting their kiddos and packing up and getting ready to move in 10 days. And now they don't have to worry about scheduling this. So we've kind of taken this off their plate. It's only 99 bucks. Like I said, 75 to 99 bucks. This is for the termite inspection, wood destroying pest report. So it's just nice from a timing perspective that we're able to pull this on the buyer side because they're willing to do it. And really what's going to take is like, I'm the one showing up, you know, it's not really time off my buyer's back. I'm going to have to open the door anyway, which is perfect. The next three, what's that?
You ever have like a lot of pest issues?
Yeah, I have a transaction right now in Imperial Beach and it has 10,000 plus 10.5 worth of termite issues right now. And that we're going to fall apart. Actually kind of over it. The appraisal came in 60K low and it's a conventional loan, which is crazy. The appraiser, it's like 1,300 and something, 1313 square feet in the tax records. And then it's, it's because it was a converted sun porch, but the tax records are saying it was permitted, right? So they're not counting it as a bedroom, you know, it's still a 3-2, but they're counting the square footage because it's permitted square footage. Usually you're trying to go the opposite way. Well, the appraiser came out and said, no, I'm not counting this. And I was like, what? It's permitted. Normally you're like holding your breath to see if they'll count unpermitted square footage, but you're not banking on it. This I thought was a slam dunk because it's permitted square footage. Well, he came out and said this wasn't done in a workmanlike manner, which kind of kind of subjective, but, and he wouldn't give us the square footage and it was like 200 square feet. So we now are 60K under and on a conventional appraisal. And I've never had this happen in my career. He made termite clearance and some stucco repair on the outside of the house, a lender required repair. So now we can't close until we get termite clearance, which normally wouldn't be a big deal, but there are tenants in the house and it's a world pandemic. So they don't want to leave. So we're going to potentially fall apart. My guys still see the value because their appraisal is kind of bullshit. So they still understand that like it's probably worth what they were asking, what they were giving them originally. So they would be willing to cough up the 60K cash maybe. The problem is we have to get the termite clearance done. And the property manager / listing agent is having a really tough time getting the tenants to vacate. So my guys are only about half in at this point, like on like wanting it. So we'll probably just end up falling out and finding them something different. But yeah,
that's like a way to get out of it because you can't get the termite damage fixed.
Yeah, and because we've been like going through all that, we're actually supposed to close today and we're not. But because we've been going through all of this and it's kind of been in the seller's court as far as like, hey, if we come up with the 60K cash, you need to pay for the termite repairs and you need to pay for the stucco repairs and handle getting the tenants to vacate for 3 days while we do the tenting. And because the ball's been in their court, we haven't removed any contingencies. So we'll have no problem getting my client's initial deposit back, the 12 grand, because right now it's just kind of in limbo. Yeah. So we'll use our inspection contingency. If you have a contingency in place, I mean, I can't tell you how many people will be like, I'll be like, why did that one fall out escrow? And they'll be like, oh, buyers just changed their mind or buyers just got cold feet. I don't ever tell a listing agent even if my buyer did just get cold feet, because it's happened once, that they got cold feet, even though that's probably a legitimate reason under the inspection contingency, because it's not just home inspection, termite inspection, roof, sewer, it's your own eyes on it too. It's like, do you want this house anymore when you're visually inspecting it? Mm-hmm. So you can technically change your mind. As long as you've got contingencies in place, you shouldn't have a tough time getting that initial deposit back. Could the sellers try to be jerks and keep it? Sure. I've had that happen too. We ultimately didn't end up in mediation or arbitration, and I convinced them to give them back to my buyers. Now, in that time, we had removed all of our contingencies, but there was what was called a supervening event that kind of happened afterwards. And so we made a case for it just verbally to the guy, and we got it back for them. But can a seller be a jerk and try to keep someone's initial deposit even when contingencies aren't removed? Yeah, people have done stupider shit. People sue for everything, not that they're suing, but so they can do it, but they have to take the buyer to mediation in order to get any of it. They don't just get it because they want it. So they would have to go to mediation. If that wasn't resolved there, they'd have to go to arbitration where a judge is going to solve it. And all the while, they can't put the home back on the market. They have to return the initial deposit before they can go back live on market. So it's usually less.
It's not valuable for them to just.
Right. It's not worth their time. Yeah. Because then they're still paying the mortgage, the property taxes, all that stuff. Okay, so this is all just about government retrofits, and we're basically through the content after this page, but government retrofits, like talking about like low flow toilets, low flow fixtures, things like that, smoke detectors, yada, yada, putting that all in the cellar. Very seldomly, I'll have them counter out. Is it this one? Yeah, the bottom one, because they don't know. A lot of times they don't know if the toilets and the fixtures are low flow, and the listing agent is not going to go find out for them because they just are lazy or something, and the seller doesn't live there, never has lived there, maybe it's a rental, and they just refuse to go find out. So they might put this back on the buyer. You just need to explain to the buyer what that means. There's no low flow police. They're never going to get found out. They don't have low flow toilets, but it is their responsibility technically to replace the toilets and shower heads and faucets and fixtures if it's not low flow already. There's also a way to figure out if it's low flow, which I'll send you guys to. if ProKebab's watching this, he's like, don't you be checking if there's freaking low flow, but dude, you're gonna get so busy. You gotta just like help yourself sometimes. I know it's a liability thing, but anyway, we know how to determine if something's low flow now. My assistant's like gone in and done that a couple times. So for escrow and title, buyer and seller are each gonna pay their own fees. And even if you do the seller credit up higher, you're still going to each pay their own here. And I wouldn't do 50-50. That's not each paying their own, because the seller's closing costs are much lower than the buyer's. And that insinuates that the seller might be paying for part of the buyer's closing costs in here. Just write each pay their own. That's super clear. I've never had anybody push back on that. Oakwood escrow and Corinthian title, because I asked on that phone call that I talk about what title and escrow they like to use. So I filled that in. The seller will always pay for this here pretty much. I've never had that countered out.
Does the seller pick do they like have a prior relationship? I don't know, like what's the benefit of?
Yeah, good question. The seller, they'll always say it's like seller's choice. It really means listing agent's choice. It really means who has that listing agent used in the past that either is their friend now, their title rep, escrow officer, or they've closed really successful transactions with them over and over and over, and they know they're going to do a good job.
Okay.
And so when they say seller's choice, it's really listing agent's choice. So I don't even sugarcoat it. I'm like, who do you like to use for title and escrow? That's how I word the question. Because I know it's not seller's choice, let's be real. Unless the seller happens to be like a title officer, and then they're going to tell you that probably. All these other costs, the seller's going to pay for county transfer tax. I've never put any of this stuff from 1 through 9 on the buyer. It's all just pretty standard. This is condos, like anything that says HOA is going to be condos, or if you have a planned urban development, a PUD, where it's a single family home, but it's still in a condo complex, like a gated community or whatever, that would have an HOA. So just be aware of that. And then this is probably unnecessary. I'm just, like I said, really OCD. This private transfer fee, if applicable, that line's probably not necessary.
Question about HOAs.
Sure.
So you have do you ask your lender so your buyer's pre-approved for whatever amount, and then you find out that there's an HOA, and I know they vary. How do you know what they qualify for when there's
That's
an
a great question. So if your client is looking anywhere except downtown, like downtown and the surrounding areas, I normally, when I have them get pre-approved, I'll have my lender use a placeholder HOA of about $300 or $350 a month. And that would be my placeholder. So and what I can tell you, in case no one has shared it, let's say they're pre-approved for 500, or let's go lower. Let's say a $300,000 condo with up to a $300 a month HOA. Okay. So if the HOA is lower, let's say the HOA is $250 and they were at their max at $300. Well, every $10,000 or every $50 you reduce your monthly payment, as far as HOA, you can go up $10,000 in your purchase price. So what that means is that HOA just went from, in your mind, because your placeholder was 300, the HOA went from their max being $300 a month HOA with a $300,000 condo. Now you find them a condo, but it's only $250 HOA. Well, they could technically qualify up to $310,000 on that condo.
So every time you have one of your buyers pre-approved, you always have them pre-approved with about a $300 HOA.
If you know they're only going to look at condos or townhomes, yeah, I'll put a placeholder in there that's $300 to $350. If I'm looking downtown for them or the surrounding areas, meaning like Bankers Hill, Little Italy, Mission Hills, Hillcrest, maybe even North Park, South Park, Kensington, I would maybe use something closer to like $500 to $600 as an HOA. Some of the downtown places, just so you're aware, they can be over $1,000 a month in HOA. So just like know that that's going to be a significant jump, because that's like if you put them in as a placeholder at $500 a month and you're looking downtown, and then they actually find a condo they fall in love with at their max purchase price, but it's $1,000 a month, like that's $500 difference divided by 50 or divided by 50. Yeah, that's $100,000 difference in the condo price. So just be very cognizant. You can put a maximum in the MLS search of an HOA. I wouldn't do that based on the pre-approval because you just put a placeholder, you just picked that amount. I would only do that if my buyer said to me, and you'll get this a lot looking at condos, especially downtown, I don't want to pay more than X amount for an HOA. Okay, cool. Do you want me to put that as the max, or do you want to put it slightly above that or slightly below that? And they'll tell you. That's the only time I would do it, because it will weed out a lot of properties for them that are way higher HOAs. But if they told you they're not comfortable paying any more than X because it's not going towards the value of their property, which I understand, then that's what you want to put in the MLS. And it's just way easier to weed stuff out they won't even purchase.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so down here, these are the last, there's 3 more items, and this is one of them. Buyer's home warranty. So here, as you can see, these buyers just happen to be really well funded. Okay, they've got a lot of money in the bank, as I'm sure you saw. These are only 3 of their accounts, and there's over $300,000 in there. So this is a drop in the bucket for them. $650. They're like, yeah, we'll take that on if that's going to maybe move the needle, and somebody else didn't do that, you know. So so we took this this buyer's home warranty on. 90% of the offers I would have written before this year, I would have the seller as the seller. Prior to 2020, so I know that's only 2 years in real estate, but I have been in the top 3 to 5% since the beginning of my career. Every offer I'm writing was on the seller, and I only had, prior to like COVID hitting, I probably had 1 seller counter it out. Actually, and I don't even know if they counted it out. I think they counted it down. So I do 650 here. And I learned that from one of the, when I was on the listing end and I sold an off-market property to one of our buyer's agents in our office, Susan Gedstad. She did this here because this is what a CRES policy, C-R-E-S, costs through Old Republic home warranty. And that's one of the best home warranty plans that you can have. It has something to do with the level of like, if something dies, the level of the replacement cost and whatnot. And I'm pretty sure you get like a brand new like kind washer, like kind dishwasher and all that jazz. So I've been pushing Old Republic pretty hard lately because my buyers have all been really, really happy with it once I discovered this. You always want to click upgraded here on the right. And then it's always buyer's choice. You can fill it in, but then you're kind of like pushing them towards one way. You could steer, sorry, that's not steering. You could put in Old Republic here, home warranty, but I just like to give them options. I don't know. I let them choose their own. I'll kind of guide them in the email, which I'll send over to you guys no later than tomorrow. This one has air conditioning. And then they don't have to spend $650. They pick a different company and it's $500. Well, that's all that they're spending, right? And if the seller's paying, I encourage them to add on every goodie they can to max that out. Because in the seller's mind, they're already paying $650. That's what they've agreed to. So you get as close as you can to that number. Or if you go over, that's fine. The buyer just covers the overage, the small difference. So you want to put in here everything that they wanted to cover. There's a wine fridge, so I threw that on there. There's no pool or spa. And then down here, this is super important. And I think this is part of the class that Ricky, my friend, Amanda's husband, used to teach. And he the funny story is he forgot to check this stuff, all the appliances. And so when he went to hand over the keys, or maybe it was just the washer dryer, he forgot something. I think it was just a washer dryer. He checked off stove, he checked off refrigerator, and he forgot to check off the washer dryer. Maybe it was in the garage or whatever. And I'll scroll to the text overflow in a second. And got to the end, and the washer dryer was gone, obviously, because the listing agent realized that they didn't ask for it. So they assumed they didn't want it. It wasn't a conversation. And Ricky was on the hook because he had told the buyers he was gonna.
So he had to buy it out of pocket.
Yeah. Now the seller, the buyer had signed it, right? But Ricky had said he was going to include all the appliances. So technically, it's the buyer should have caught it, but really, like, Ricky did what was right, and he bought them a new washer dryer. Buyers. So what I do here, this is total overkill. But again, learn this from that scenario. I also have had a seller take the fridge when they weren't supposed to. There was a property I sold last year or the year before, 2 fridges, one in the garage, crappy one, but stainless steel, whatever, probably cost $400. There was like one in the kitchen, stainless steel, it probably cost $2,500. They took the $2,500 one after our final walkthrough, but before I handed over the keys. They took the nice one